You know, Monty took all the flack from dickheads like Loco when CLG came back to NA and they got wrecked in that playoffs.
Okay.
Apparently, right, when he brought them out for that fucking Korean boot camp and he had them practice and remember, like, the best teams in Korea, like Samsung Blue, Samsung White, these fucking morons like Lincoln Doublelift just went home, used none of the comps Monty had prepared for them, and just copied comps from the Katie Arrows Samsung Blue final that they just watched while they were also in Korea and hadn't ever practiced, and just used those in the playoffs and got their shit pushed in 3-0. And then after that, think about the context of this. After that, fucking Link had the gall to like write that massive 17-page document where he blamed everyone else.
Link was innocent in CLG failing. If I'm not
Dude,
sure
how
what
insane
you're
is
talking about.
that? Like, and the maddest thing is, Monty held this story until 5 years later. This guy should have a fucking statue built by him by Hotshot GG right now. Like, this guy could have put these motherfuckers in the ground, and he should have, by the way. Like, in that particular scenario, I know why he didn't, because it's like, if you're the coach, first of all, if you can't convince your own team not to do some stupid ass shit, it is sort of your fault. And also, you don't want to like, reveal that shit at that point in time, you know, you kill any other coaching officer. I don't know, I kind of get why he didn't, but at the same time, fuck everyone in that team. 1,000,000%.
Don't worry, Karma got to CLG already.
What, because they got Wilden Green now? It's kind of a bit harsh for Loco, but I agree with you. So.
Wow.
No, that's the thing. Is like, mate, that joke is never going to stop working. You realise that, LS? It's like, I can use this joke forever because the joke goes like this. You know, Weldon said he doesn't think talent exists. Well, I get it. I'd think the same thing if I was in the CLG practice room every day.
Never gets old.
It never will. It never will. You have to understand that. It never will. No, that joke will work forever. You have to realise that. He just looks over at Darshan and just goes, It doesn't exist, does it? Like, where did yours go, motherfucker? Did the vampires come in the room overnight or something? You're just drained right dry, aren't you? You're just...
LS, why are you laughing? Why aren't you supporting CLG?
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Anyway, that was just the warm-up part of the show, you know, just getting everyone's good vibes going. Right, this is going to be episode 45 of Listen Loco. And this is going to be all those episodes where we have, I don't think actually LS is a return guest, because as far as I know, didn't he only come on for the Worlds show?
Yeah, Worlds.
Yes. So he is returning to this concept. It just wasn't called Listen Loco at the time. So I'm going to job this episode one of those episodes where old Uncle Thorin has to call in his personal favours and ask LS ever so politely if he could do me the personal favour of appearing on a show with Locodoco and pretending to be cordial with him.
Wait, LS?
So LS has granted me that request, and I appreciate it, you know. So
that's bullshit.
Thanks, you know.
LS agreed.
Is it?
Yeah, LS agreed to come on the show.
Yeah.
All I'm gonna say is this, Loco. All I'm gonna say is this, my dude. I don't normally reveal a lot of stuff, but sometimes, you know, if you're gonna provoke me, then I have to respond. All I'm gonna say is this: every time you tried to book LS on the show, didn't happen. When old Uncle Thorin reached out one time, here's LS.
Wait,
what do you know about that? I'll let the viewers decide what that means.
Oh my god. Me and LS. Okay. Me and LS
can decide.
Me and Loco had a really nice talk a few weeks ago.
Anyway,
and I agreed to come on the show then.
In the end, Loco agreed through gritted teeth that indeed a freaker just misplayed everything. Cloud9 are subhuman trash who never did anything in that game, and it's all happy families now, guys. We're all here. We've resolved that whole issue from that matchup, and we're going to go forwards into a bright new dawn of Korean League of Legends. So obviously we're going to talk about LCK on this episode. The finals await us, but let's lead into the finals on this one. So I want to start here, LS. Right, before we even get into these matchups, what do you actually think of the overall strength of the Korean season, this split? Because it's been a topic that I noticed was discussed really heavily when Griffin was like undefeated. Because when they were undefeated, people were doing what my famous Jat dilemma, where it was like, well, are they really that good? Or is everyone else just absolute trash? They were doing that whole angle on it, you know. So what's your take on like the overall strength of the split being?
So mid-split, I remember ending some of the casts, and I would look at Atlas or Valdez and be like, holy shit, that was actually so bad. And I thought to myself mid-split, like around week 5 or so, that Sandbox was looking as good as they were because they were one of the only teams that were playing as a team, and they had a clear identity with what they wanted to do, whereas everyone else looked like they were still trying to find their foundation. Not that the individual player skill was necessarily bad, but that everyone was looking really weak. I think that my opinion on that actually changed like weeks 5 through the end. I felt like a lot of teams started getting better. And I think that the teams getting better is what has actually been causing Griffin to look like maybe they're faltering. I mean, outside of their awful drafts as well as SKT's awful drafts, I think that the finals is looking like SKT are probably coming in as the favorite. But I think that the last couple of weeks has just been all the teams just got better from week 5 forward.
All right.
What do you think, Loco?
So I want to touch on what Alex said. If you look at the 3 early starters for Korean LCK this split, it's Griffin, Sandbox, and SKT. And these are the 3 teams that had the most practice with their roster. Like Griffin and Sandbox kept their roster coming in from last year, so there's a lot of continuity for those 2 teams. As for SKT, even though they have a brand new roster and the only player continuing over is Faker, they were the first team to complete their roster in the offseason. All the other teams took a much longer time completing their roster, and SKT got to practice really early. So I think the continuation was really big in terms of like those teams doing well. As for overall level of like Korean season, as good as it was, I don't watch China, so it's hard for me to say if Korea is the best league. Like I'd have to compare it to LEC and NA. One thing I can say though, like the top teams in Korea, we left behind so much talent. So a lot of the Korean casters like to talk about it as West Coast or Western Division and the Eastern Division because there's 10 teams in Korea, and they list it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the Eastern Division is 6 to 10 teams, and in the Eastern Division, like between Genji.
You can explain this premise again. I don't understand the premise.
Okay.
Like, why is it Eastern Division?
So, you know when you list out 10 teams, right? You usually list 1 to 10 in a single row.
Right.
But in Korea, to fit the screens, they list out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they start again on the different...
So all they basically mean by this is the top half of the league and the bottom half of the league.
They just nicknamed
They just mean like the top half, and they're going to say if that's very good, and then the bottom half is terrible.
Yeah, they just gave...
Okay, I get the premise.
Yeah,
now.
they gave it nicknames. So in the bottom half, we left behind so much talent. There's Genji in there with Ruler, Peanut, and then there's KT in there with Smep, Score, BDD. Yeah, and there's Afrika there with Keen. There's just so much talent left behind in the bottom half.
Didn't mention UCAL there, notice, with 2 fucking mad UCAL supporters in the chat, both of whom will be very silent this episode, I imagine. Continue on.
I don't know. There was UCAL, like, suddenly disappeared. I heard he got murdered. Like, I haven't seen him in a while.
It's almost like he didn't have, fucking Score, Smeb, all those players around him. Weird that, isn't it? Yeah.
He had to carry bottom half tier players in, last year?
And he couldn't, unlike Froggen.
Oh my god.
Exactly, get dicked on. Everywhere in the world you can get dicked on by Froggen. Understand that. It's like where in the world in Carmen, whatever her name was. Exactly. Keep going.
Do you know what Doran, you're a Froggen stan. You're a stan. Anyway, so...
I'm not though, because if I was a stan, I'd say he was the best. QED, I win. There you go. QED, I win.
Oh my god. Anyways, but yeah, I think overall level of LCK, it's been good, but it can definitely be so much fucking better because we left behind so much talent, and I just can't comment on like how good it is worldwide because I don't watch enough China, but I think it's better than Europe than NA. So at the worst, it's second. At the best, it's the best in the world.
Right, what makes this a bit difficult to explain is that what people were setting up as the Jack Dilemma example of like, just Griffin and a bunch of bad teams like obviously that was never entirely right. Like as you guys said at the beginning of the split already, Sandbox Gaming was very dangerous. SK Telecom clearly was going to get better considering where they started. So already there were some good teams. Like if SK Telecom had gone to the West and played a bunch of teams, it'd be amazing. They'd still do very, very well. But I will say for most of the split, I do think that was the case. Like actually, it is a little bit taking away from Griffin's dominance that they beat so many teams that, like, I would say almost no team had their identity except Sandbox. I'm with LS on that one.
Right.
Like Sandbox had their win conditions from the very beginning of the split. It's actually why they ended up falling off so hard. It's like when other teams got really good and were better than them in certain areas, they just fell. Like they couldn't adapt. SK Telecom got better and better and better as the split went on, but they already started very good. The main problem is this. At the end of the split, it was a pretty good split. Like by the end of this split, it was easily as good as last year's spring, where again, it was very stratified, like two teams. The problem is a bunch of the teams just took way too long to come online. Like when Damwon got Flame and they were like swapping in and out him and Naguri, the team already looked really good at that point in time. But the record was way too late. Like you would have had to win most of your games to get a higher seed. Kingzone was the only real team that made like massive progress over the end of the split, and they were still a really flawed team. So if anything, I think they're the barometer that if they could make it to third in both the regular split and the playoffs, that to me shows that their league wasn't that strong overall. But luckily, I don't think it actually mattered. Because even though in past years it was a killer to leave Katie Rolster behind when you went to Worlds, or Kingzone behind last year, because you leave all that talent behind. Luckily, it's only like one or two talents in those teams you mentioned before. It's not like three people, you know, like even Scott, he's in his last year, mate. Like he kind of phoning it in once he sees that he's losing the league here, you know. They already tried other people as well. So for me, the key thing is the top two teams, Griffin and SK Telecom, are so good, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, that the rest of the league isn't that strong. Like, even if like let's look at some of these teams like KT Rolster, Afrika are the really bad ones that finished near the bottom of the league. When you actually look at their lineups now, you can see that the flaws just overtook those teams. They have good players, but the flaws mean they deserve to not be very good teams. Yeah, they should, in theory, have been like playoff contenders, but they weren't going to win the league no matter what. So SK Telecom obviously still has one of the best rosters probably ever assembled on paper. Griffin still is a fucking super sick team. I think it's one of those examples of where, like, in a way, Westerners are right. LCK wasn't that strong. But it isn't going to matter because the best LCK teams will fucking whoop that ass. So I don't think that will end up mattering personally. Right, let's talk about the playoffs then. So before we go into these matchups, what do you actually think of the rise of Kingzone, LS? Because this was a team that for a while they were in the bottom half. You know, they were looking like a team that was just a prison for Deft and your boy Tusin. It was just a bot lane prison, but they managed to get out. They actually became pretty decent by the end.
It felt like Kingzone looked really good towards the end. I think that they mentally caved in the final game against SK Telecom. I almost would go to say though that it's really I know to a lot of viewers they might not understand when I say that I think that Kingzone is better than SKT, but that SKT has more mental fortitude and that allows them to get through more spots than Kingzone can. And I know that sounds so weird, but watching those playoff games was just so bizarre to me. The spots that Kingzone would find themselves in and then be unable to do anything, SK Telecom persevered through. I mean, that was the story for me watching the playoffs. I think that given Kingzone more time, as long as Pawn continues to actually be a mid laner, I think that they might actually have a bright summer. I might even say that Kingzone could just probably be the third team to join SKT and Griffin at Worlds, most likely.
LF, can you move your mic away a little bit? It's like making fuzzy noises. I think it's too close.
Okay. These mics are fucking weird. I'm so sorry.
All right. Right, what do you
People
think,
are saying that it's the webcam mic, but it's not.
No, it's definitely that mic. Yeah, keep going.
I didn't get to watch through the entire series. On the first one, what was Palm playing? Something made it seem like. I watched through the draft.
I think Pawn was playing Corky in the first game. I'll double check. Let me have a look.
Let me go back.
Yes, he was playing Corky against Lysandra. You know.
Yeah, Corky against Liz.
you know,
Dorian, take give me
obviously I didn't want you to have to roll out of bed and watch a whole 3 games before we did this show, but you know, my bad. I'll just fucking watch all the games for you, shall I?
Dorian,
Right? So anyway,
give your first take first.
yeah.
Let me look at the
Okay,
draft again.
here's what I think about this series. Is like I said, I didn't think Kingzone was actually a very good team over the split. But you know what? From actually the way this playoff series played out, I don't actually blame LS for his comment there, because if I tell you this is a 3-0 for SK Telecom, they sweep the series, and you look at the actual games, kill scores all look good for SK Telecom. None of that tells you anything about the way these 3 games went. Like in these games, Kingzone literally, if you could find like a moment in each of the first 2 games, you could have paused. Like it would probably be like, I don't know, like 18 minutes in the first game, like 15 minutes in the second game, where it's like Kingzone's going to win these games. Like they're getting all the early advantages. They're getting kills in lane solo. They're fucking getting great skirmishes where they trap an SK Telecom member and kill them. The problem is, like, this is the problem I think Kingzone has. Is like Kingzone's one of those teams that doesn't even have a fucking go button. Their go button is like the button that gives like the rats the sugar water that they're just pressing until they die rather than eat food. Like, you know those like experiments they pushed? Mm-hmm. That's the Kingzone go button, because the problem is in the early game, they can do some sick shit. Like actually Pawn was playing like a motherfucker for first 2 games here. Mm-hmm. But then later in the game, when they don't have advantages, they still just go all the time. Mm-hmm. And as a result, like you can just draw them into a million bad fights. Like all SK Telecom did by the end of this series to win the series was you just have to start the Baron up. You just wait until Kingzone comes in and they just stop doing the Baron and go and kill Kingzone. It's like, like this is like rookie shit. Like that's the problem I think with Kingzone is they have some good players, actually better than I thought on paper, but their actual like macro understanding seems fucking terrible, like really bad.
I also so going back to game 1, the one I actually watched, I was very surprised they picked stuff like Vi. And Kingzone's always been a team that's been a little.
The draft looked terrible, but they were making it work.
They've been a little off meta like throughout the whole season, and somehow making it work. And it's very rare for a Korean team to do that because all the Korean coaches come from StarCraft background or just League of Legends background, and they just want standard League of Legends. They want what's normal. They want what's like we farm to this point, and then we team fight, or we draft a comp with a top carry, and then we play towards the top carry. Like they love drafting things that are very, very specific, that they have a clear idea on how it should be played. Where Kingzone doesn't feel like that. Throughout the season, they were playing a lot of random stuff. They were playing stuff that weren't meta, and I feel like players, especially players like Pawn, have a lot of say on that team.
Yeah, I completely agree that Kingzone was more so off meta. Commenting or circling back to Duncan's comment about their draft, I thought the draft was really bad. Think that it doesn't have a leg to stand on in the later stages, which is counterproductive to why you would pick Corki and Sivir. I think game number 2 was actually a pretty excellent display of 2 very different types of team compositions, and also a game in which the gold advantage is misleading.
This game was a killer because, in this particular game, if you have that draft in your Kingzone, you have to get going super early. You have to roll. Yes. And they were like, what's mad is this is why I say SK Telecom 3-0 in this series. Don't think that they played great. SK Telecom blamed into their fucking win condition. They were giving them early kills. It was so dumb. Like, why is Faker trying some mad fucking gank super early in the game right into all the Kingzone members when his only condition to lose the game is to get their fucking comp rolling early? Like, believe it or not, Faker on Silas made tons of mistakes. He still was very good at with his ult usage, but he made some stupid plays in this game.
The thing about game number 2 that was so surprising is I remember the shitfest that was the Reddit comments after saying like, oh, how did Kingzone lose? And I'm sitting here and I'm like, how the fuck did SK Telecom not lose when Khan and Faker were playing for the enemy team? Because throughout the entire game, it's like there's no way for Kingzone to penetrate turrets. There's no way for them to actually start the Baron. And the game reached a breaking point where SKT just has to wait. And it's as simple as that. But Khan just can't fucking help himself. He feels this obligation to move into the Fog of War or approach a fucking minion wave that's going to come for him anyway. And then Faker, trying to be some fucking Romeo Juliet, tries to save him a couple of times. And the game just reached this really awful state that it just didn't need to get to. But it felt like throughout the course of the entire series, Khan and Faker were just playing so bad. Even Faker's Akali in game number 3, it was like I'm watching it, and it doesn't have the Faker effect. It just looks like a random
Mate, Rascal's Akali was better in this series than Faker's. Game over.
It just looked like a random Akali, especially the spots that it found itself in. And like obviously, when I'm casting it, I have to talk about, you know, like he's looking for these openings, he's trying to find these windows, and he did create a lot of the windows for his team that game. But it was not like, if you asked me to recommend Akali performances from the season, that one doesn't even make the top 5. So, even though he was the primary carry, he won MVP that game, it wasn't really that impressive. It was more so, like, I think Tushin spit Pawn out to die, like, for first blood or something. And then there was another one where Pawn couldn't locate the R key. That would have saved him from Faker. There were just so many things. It was... SK Telecom played really sloppy, but Kingzone just managed to throw it away. So I don't know. I think Griffin. I mean, segueing this into the finals, though, I think Griffin probably just wins the finals.
Sorry, we'll get to that in a minute. There's a little spoiler there by Les. All right, come on then. What do you think, Loco?
Well, to be honest, like I didn't get to watch the games, and I'm very surprised to hear you guys talk about it in this way, where you guys are talking about how badly SKT played, and they still 3-0'd Kingzone. Because Kingzone, one thing that they had throughout watching them is they were a very clear team on, as Thorin liked to say, they knew the way their bread was buttered. You have a rookie top, you have a very young top and a very young jungle and kind of experienced mid, and probably the best bottom duo in LCK. So it's very clear how your team should play out and very clear what the win condition of it should be. And
on those lines, by the way, Loco, that's probably the maddest part. If you didn't watch this series, you would never guess this, mate. Their bottom lane was getting fucking pushed in all day long by SK Telecom's bot lane. Like, they weren't doing shit for their bot lane. In fact, I actually wonder if what LS thinks about this. Like, if you look at this series, this looked like Kingzone thought, like, the whole game is you just fucking keep Khan down all game long. Forget playing through our bot lane. And by the way, they were doing a great job of it. Like, Khan was a fucking mad liability in this series. Like, I'm completely out on him. Because what I've realized from seeing him in SK Telecom is, I thought in SK Telecom, he would be like, right, cool, I'm surrounded by all these carry players now. So when it's my time to carry, good, I get to carry. When it isn't, let's just play it cool. There's no play it cool. Like, he doesn't have plan B. And what I've realized about Khan now is, like, Kingzone wasn't, like, geniusly created to allow Khan to do. That's the only way Khan can play League of Legends. Like, he has to just be like Marin fucking season, whatever it was, 5, where he just go forward all day long, and you have to just save him if he fucks up. Like, this guy doesn't ever stop. So, like, yeah, he can win you the game. He also can lose you the game, though. And normally, you know, a good player is like, I can win you the game, or I just do good, or okay. He's like, he becomes either liability or the winning condition. I hate this guy.
I think he did good in Game 3 in lane. But that was it. I think he was a liability in Game 1 and 2. Very, very big liability.
Like, think about this, Loco, right? So obviously people know I'm a big fan of Flame, right? And Flame has this stereotype, like, oh, he's just so stubborn, he wants to play lane dominant style and carry the lane. Flame doesn't go for 1v1 solo kills in lane and die and get killed. That doesn't happen. Like, Khan does that all the time, dude. Like, it's not even like Flame, when he is lane dominant, means he is going to try and out CS you, and then yes, if the position presents itself, he goes for a kill, or if jungle help comes, you get kills that way. Like, he's not going to force the game. Khan literally out of nowhere, he's like a solo queue top laner. You know when you leave the solo queue top laner as a jungler, you're like, right, I've put your ward there, dude, see you in a minute. You walk away and it's like that gif where that fucking baby deer's trying to, like, that guy's picking that baby deer out of the fucking pool and then it just jumps back in. It's like, that's what Khan's like. You leave the laner, you're right there, dude, see ya. And like 1 second later, like the observers in fucking LCK hate fucking Khan. Because you just see, like, on the map, they're trying to watch like a bot lane trade, and you just see on the map, like, his champion, the circle is on top of the other person's champion. They're, oh Jesus, let's get up there. Like, just scroll like to the top. He loves going for 50-50 fights in lane. Like, what is that? This is the LCK. This isn't fucking like some joke league. This is the best league in the world. You're supposed to be trying to be the world champion. Like, I can't believe a player at this level. This is where I really actually start to wonder about, like, the mythos of people like Koma, etc. Koma, right, everyone was giving him mad props because he, like, shackled Huni, didn't he? Trained Huni, like, don't just play that all the way all the time. He can't get to Khan, mate. He can't do it. I don't know why, but Khan's just doing whatever the fuck he wants.
I think to a certain degree, like, Goma has taken a backseat in the organization, and Fly and... Oh, holy shit, slipping my neck. I actually play Zephyr. Fly and Zephyr have been the main coaches from what I heard, and
Okay.
it also in this season of League of Legends and in 2019 there has to be more player freedom allowed, and I think that's what they are going for. Should Khan not, what if it be Whippo or Hashinshin and just push out all the time? Yes, but also I think they kind of tried last year with Peanut and Huni, like shackling players that are a certain way, right? Like Huni.
That was 2 years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, Huni was a certain way, Peanut was a certain way, and they try to just force that into their system. And I think this year it's been more so letting Clid be Clid, letting Con be Con, and trying to find results with it than being so restricted like they used to.
There's a room between, you know. You don't have to go. I mean, I'll be careful not to do any political allusions here. You don't have to go like purely totalitarian or completely just let everyone do what the fuck they want. Like, that's what I never understood was it's not like Western coaches just let the players do everything they want.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean,
There's room between.
if you never let people been loose before, like, what's a good description of it? Like, if you've always been really, really strict, I think you're gonna have a hard time controlling people when they're
so
loose.
basically, SK Telecom now, they were like the super hardcore, like Southern Baptist Christian fundamentalists. You know, they were like, kids, the Earth's 6,000 years old, and you know, God doesn't like it when he sees you touching Mr. Winky when you're in your room. And they're like, they've gone super hard on them like that. And then eventually, someone comes along and they're like, oh, you know, you've got to open up to communicate with the kids. You know, let them be themselves. And then they're just like, oh yeah, kids, do whatever you want. And the kid just rolls up the next day like, yeah, I'm just gonna park this stolen whip out there and go do crack in my room now, bitch. And then it's like, oh, see you, son. Like, that's how far they've gone the other way. Like, get it in the fucking middle somewhere. Come on. Get it in the middle.
They have. Ellis, what's your take on the freedom that some of the SKT players have been given? Do you think they should be more strict, or do you think it's not even freedom? Do you think they just can't control it?
Well, I don't like to I mean, I've said this before, right? That I don't like using conjecture, right, to assume what's going on, because I feel like this drives false narratives for both coaches and analysts in the West, and then it can end up causing people to have two conflicting ideas. For instance, you would not call the Genji coach garbage when it's the same coach that brought Genji to multiple worlds. You would not necessarily say that the Misfits coach is garbage after Misfits had the heroic run in 2016. And then Misfits dropped off a cliff temporarily, and then Misfits started coming back. Coaching is weird in the sense that I don't like to judge coaches by teams' success or lack thereof, but rather the vocal opinions of people that have interacted with them either directly or indirectly through third party or by tangible things that can be watched publicly. Because otherwise, I think everything's asinine. Everything that we're saying right now about Coma, Fly, and Zephyr could just be complete speculation. You know, I mean, we see this every day on Reddit, right? A lot of people say that, you know, oh, why is this coach drafting like this? Oh, bring back this coach for this draft. Motherfucker, those fucking idiots don't even draft. It's all the players inside of the fucking team comp. They're just sitting on stage to look pretty. You know, they might say, oh, what about this champion? Or what about that champion? That's all that they're doing. They're not really doing anything. So unless tangible evidence comes out that lets us dive deeper onto Coma, Zephyr, or Fly, I'm going to be very hesitant to actually critique them. And this has actually been one of the reasons that I've advocated so highly for Coma in light of other people saying that, you know, he's just riding Faker and whatnot, or yada, 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 is that there's too many players that don't have a reason to praise this guy that continue to do so. And I don't think that it's just Korean culture. He has to be doing something right, even if maybe it's not on a technical aspect, like actually coaching the game, but maybe managing the emotions and personalities within the players, because that's often what we've heard about. Even players that have had bad breaks from SKT, you know, that's tended to be the case. So that would be my only comments on that.
Well, then let's tie it into the game then. I mean, it's Loco always does that anyway, but
Right.
whatever. All he does is just hot potato it. Whenever it's one of his favourites, he just hot potatoes it between the coach and the player. Meanwhile, if it's a different player he sees do badly, he just flames the player. Like, obviously. Like, my opinion on this is pretty simple. I've said this many times before, Loco, because it's the same principle I use in Counter-Strike. Because what happens is in Counter-Strike, pro players think the ultimate way to like have a gotcha moment over an analyst is this, right? Say I say to them, oh, look how badly they executed this aspect here, you know, like, look, this guy failed completely when he went in. They'll be like, but you aren't in our team, so you don't know who made that call. And what I always tell them is this, it's irrelevant, mate. Doesn't matter who made the call if the end result was shit. Like, I don't actually need to know exactly why it was shit, but I can tell you it was shit. So in telling me that, all you've told me is, yes, I don't know the specific detail, but the outcome is the same. So in that sense, I would agree with LS. Like, if we just look at what the players did in the game, we don't really need to speculate entirely about the coaching aspect. Like, at the end of the day, Khan is just playing badly. Like, he's just playing like an idiot. And so the fact that he's on one of the best teams in the world, I find is really alarming, because going into this finals, Khan should be a primary win condition for SK Telecom. He should be like a really great chance for them to win this finals. He's like the most mismatched lane that's going to be in that final. But if he's going to play like this, he could fucking just, first of all, Griffin already knows how to not play around top. And if the way this is going right now, if I'm Tarzan, I'm pathing top all day long every time I see fucking idiot Khan pushing up.
I mean, to compound off what you're saying, though, about like watching players and you know, we don't know what the coaching thing is. I think unless we see a stylistic change occur, it's and what I mean by that is like what you're referencing with Huni, right? The reckless aggression into playing tanks and then playing defensively. That obviously has to be coaching influence, because there's so much objective data that would point that this could be a trend, or that he had this behavior and then suddenly it magically changes, and then whatever ends up happening. Or objective stylistic changes with how someone conducts their early to mid transition or something like that. I think that's probably the only way that you can begin talking about potential coaching influence. But then they have 3 coaches, so which one do we award the credit to?
We just talk about it overall as a staff, like whether they were able to make changes or not. And also, I mean, the thing that I guess bothers me about the whole Khan situation is, and why I don't think SK did a good job of reining in players, is if Khan has had a certain problem with him like throughout the whole split or throughout his whole career, like playing too forward and being played towards, I think it got covered up a lot when he was on Kingzone because they were a very top focused team. If that mistake never gets fixed, and even on SKT, like they're not fixing the mistake, I think there has to be some criticism towards the coaching staff. Could Khan be a super fucking stubborn motherfucker and refuse to listen? That might be what's happening, but also there is some onus on the coaches to make sure that if you see problems early, like it is accounted for and there is best effort done to fix that problem. Like, I've been in situations where players had problems and throughout the whole split, despite working on them, it wasn't fixed. Then there is some onus on me. There is some onus on the SKT coaches for these problems, like, to be addressed and make sure it doesn't happen, like, leading into playoffs, leading into finals. But if in the series, right before they have to play the finals, like, these problems are still persisting, then, yeah, it is a huge issue.
Like, put it this way, if the meta hadn't switched, which obviously I'm assuming we're going to talk about with Griffin, because it clearly hit Griffin and hurt them a bit with, like, for example, their top lane got way, way worse when the meta switched to carries. If the meta had not switched, Khan would have been such a liability at this point in time, because this motherfucker could not play Sion. Never mind, like, plays it bad. They didn't even put him on side. I think he played like 2 games the whole split or something. Like, he had to play a minimum, like a bruiser, most of the time carry no matter what, even when the meta wasn't that. Or he got Urgot. He got those drafts at the very beginning of the split where it's like, you have to be an absolute cretin to fuck this draft up. So, like, I think actually, if anything, the meta has just helped SK Telecom. And even then, you still see all these mad flaws. And as we go into the final, like, let's talk about the final. What about, before we get to the specific matchup, what do you think of the downfall of Griffin, LS? So they were on point to literally go undefeated. They'd beaten all the good teams. It was supposed to be a done deal. And then they lost to Genji and they lost to Afrika, who at the time were pretty fucking bad teams. So what do you think of the way things ended for Griffin? Did it shake your faith?
Well, I think other teams got better, and I think that Griffin maybe got a little bit lazy. I think the manner in which they lost the games has to be looked at too. it didn't shake my faith. Actually, on the topic of meta, Korea has been gravitating more so towards tank tops. And yes, even though Khan will be resilient to that, and there is Jace and Akali up there in top lane, I do think that 9.6 did bring back Urgot, and that could be a saving grace. It brought back Urgot for Urgot enthusiasts. So for Sword, I think that could be big, and then
You can play Ornn in theory as well, right?
Ornn, exactly.
Ornn,
So, and also right now, I forget what patch he was changed in. Nautilus is very popular right now. Is that 9.7? Nautilus is being played in mid and top right now in Korea. Quite often, but I don't know. So this is obviously something that we're, because we're in playoffs and whatnot, we don't get to see that often. 9.6 was the Nautilus buffs, but now people are starting to use them in solo queue. So that patch is 9.6. Maybe Nautilus pops up too, even though, it's taken a couple of weeks for people to start picking it up.
Okay.
Actually, I think the meta favors Griffin very heavily coming into the match. So yeah.
Beyond like Nautilus, so you think they're going to be playing Nautilus and Ornn and Urgot top?
Well, the
I
point
think
is, if you're Griffin, why would you bother playing any of the carries? It's just a waste of time, isn't
Right.
it?
I think Urgot is I would say Urgot has a pretty high possibility of coming out, and Ornn as well. I'm speculating that maybe Nautilus could come out.
Here's the thing that makes sense, right? What makes absolute sense in this regard? This is why actually Griffin, people went way too ham the other way to try and be like, they're done, it's over for them. Like when they lost those games, it's because, like, first of all, as LS said, like, they were top of the league already. Like, they could, in theory, have still lost the top spot, but it was very unlikely. Secondly, these are the teams you practice for the least, because they're the shittest teams in the league who can't even make playoffs. And then thirdly, yes, they briefly showed some problems, because Sword actually didn't have that great a meta when they switched to the top lane meta. But, like, if you can now play tanks, as he says, then you have no problem at all. Because the one thing nobody's going to do is blow 3 bans on the shit top laner of Griffin,
Right.
banning out tanks. You don't ban out tanks against the worst player on the other team. Like, if you do that, you leave all the power picks open for the mid and AD carry. Like, you're not doing that at all. And Tarzan's going to get his pick every time. You're not going to do it. So it's actually the one position. You don't have to worry about that guy having a limited champion pool. He'll just take whichever one of the ones is available, and he'll do it. He'll just not die in lane. He'll wait for team fights, and the rest of the game will carry, which is what Griffin's done all year long. The formula still works.
One thing that's kind of worrying is if they don't play tanks, a lot of teams that saw blue side draft or their approach to blue side draft has been picking double carries that are flexible, like taking something like Jace Akali, Irelia Akali, any combination of flex picks that can be played in both mid and top, and picking 2 of them and being able to flex throughout. Isn't that a way that they can be attacked in draft, and an edge they won't have for Griffin? Because they've been a team that always has gotten edge in draft, and that was one of their core identities.
Who always gets an edge in draft?
Griffin.
Griffin is soon.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that blue side's interesting right now because red side has to ban Silas. Red side has to ban potentially Lissandra, even though there's been counters that have come up, and we've seen Chovy is actually willing to forego her. So it's not even like you can just not ban Lissandra, not ban Silas, and then try to get one of the other. I think that red side is really pincered, and that blue side does have a slight edge, and I think that even more so on Griffin, blue side has an edge. Because Sword, I mean, he's probably willing to go into 40-60, 45-55 matchups, so that the whole counter pick top thing is semi-irrelevant. And I think that just the way that the meta is right now favors Griffin because there's so many power picks that just have to be banned away.
Yeah, there's another factor that goes mad into Griffin's favor. Is like, you go and look at their champion pools, you would literally think that they were just setting up for this playoffs and that they knew the fucking meta. Like, the champion pools for their best players, like, put it this way, if you go on to Chovy, okay, so 2 of his most won champions, Zoe and Lissandra, or what's the other one? Akali. Those are the literal meta champions now. Then you go into the bottom lane with Viper, right? His best champions, Lucian, Ezreal, Kai'Sa, and then he plays a bunch of the mages. Like, you can't get better draft than this. Like, what are you going to ban out? And then forget Tarzan. He plays everything, literally everything. Like, I don't know how you ban out Griffin. You don't. If you're playing against Griffin, in my opinion, you forget doing any of that shit. You just try and get a good draft for yourself. That's all you do. You don't try and mind game him. You try and get some good shit for you try and get Jarvan for Clid if you can. You try and get Faker onto whatever he wants to play. You try and get Teddy something he likes. That's it. That's all you do. And then you hope you can win the game. There's not going to be any like 4D chess in the draft, in my opinion. Unless Griffin wants to do some crazy shit. And actually, that's one aspect of this finals that I do think will be an equalizing factor. As someone who has seen every single LCK final, the thing I hate the most about this format, the so-called Gauntlet format, where if you're the number one seed, you wait in the final, is go back in history and look how many times the team that was in that final, the number one seed, either lost or had a super close series. It's most of the times in LCK history. There's been, I think the only one off the top of my head that completely crushed it was like season 5 summer SK Telecom where they 3-0'd KT. And that was when Faker was just styling on everyone. Aside from that, it's always close. And the reason why is because the team that waits in the final, the best team in the league, has to wait like fucking 3 weeks before they play an official game. Yeah. So as a result, it doesn't matter how many, everyone knows this who's been a pro or been associated with pros. Yeah. Doesn't matter how many scrims you do, it can never replicate a real match. The same concept, by the way, exists in combat sports like MMA. It's famous. There's a concept called ring rust, right? Ring rust doesn't mean you weren't in the ring. Obviously, you did your whole boot camp, you were training every day, but the point is nothing can prepare you as much as playing an actual official game with, because obviously in the official game you get to see what really works, you get to see what your level really is, you get to see what flaws actually exist. So as a result, I always think as long as whatever team's coming into the final through the gauntlet, as long as they're really strong, it gives them a shot in the final. So we saw this with Afrika last year against Kingzone, where Kingzone was supposed to deck these guys, but it was way closer than it should be. You go back a few years, KT Roaster against SK Telecom. Like, actually, that's the one aspect I'll give SK Telecom, is they've been able to play these series, and now they come in with this like warm up against Kingzone, get all your flaws exposed, come straight into the final the next week. If you're the guys from Griffin, you haven't played for weeks, and you basically have barely played on this patch. That's rough.
I think one thing that also plays into SKT is experience and kind of hype behind them. Like, people say it doesn't matter, but like hype and experience and like the mood of the finals matters so much. I remember it was the Samsung White versus who was it? Not Samsung White. MVP Ozone versus Blaze. I talked to Helios and Lust before going in, and when there is like a certain storyline, or when you are like the favorites and you are expected to win, like after losing games, like it shakes you so much and your outlook on things shakes you so much. I'm curious to see what happens if Griffin drops game to SKT in terms of like Sword getting busted wide open. Like, I'm not sure how much mental strength Griffin is going to have throughout a best of 5. This is their first time playing in finals. For players like Sword, where there's so much community backlash towards them, and also they're being the kind of the older player on the team, and also kind of the player that's always sacrificing and constantly getting compared. Like, people are actually, it isn't their first time in finals, my bad. They played versus, who is it?
The last final, KT Roaster.
Yeah, last time they played versus KT. And then for Sword, there's so, like, it might be just the storyline, but in Korea, like, this storyline gets talked over in even the casters. So what if Keen joined Griffin? What if Keen joined Griffin? Like, Sword is the weak link on Griffin. That's a storyline that gets constantly talked about. And for SKT and Griffin, whenever they play, and if Sword has a bad game and if they start losing, I'm curious to see what the mental stability of the overall team is going to be. Because for SKT, they have nothing to lose going into finals. I think if SKT got 3-0'd, people wouldn't be saying shit. But for Griffin to lose this, there's going to be a lot of weight onto it.
Problem is, I don't know how SKT is going to win. That's the problem. Like, when I saw this Kingzone series here, SKT don't even start winning these team fights until later in the game. Like, they're losing them all early on. It's fucking disgraceful. Like I'm amazed, because here's the thing. I won't make it like that one series was their whole split. They were pretty good throughout the whole split. They were strong out of all lanes. But like, actually, when they got into the playoffs, this is the thing that we discussed earlier. It's like, the two players they make take supportive roles in SK Telecom. It's fucking Faker and Teddy. Like, what is this shit? These are the two players I want to carry this motherfucker. What are you doing? Like, it's amazing. Tell you what, if you like to get triggered by Lissandra comps, SK
Yeah.
Telecom love a Lissandra comp. They love to get Faker. Get him off all the champions that can carry. The last thing I want is the best player of all time carrying this game.
A lot of teams, like, you need glue pieces in your comp, and Lissandra and Varus and Jarvan those are the three most like common glue pieces that I would say that teams pick, and SKT leans a lot on Lissandra and sometimes on Varus, so that's just how they designed their comp. And I'm sure they tried it the other way where they have like Conplay Ornn or something. I don't think that's going to work out well, so just by need of necessity, like Faker and Teddy probably have to do those roles.
It ain't good
do
enough, man.
you want Kana on Ornn? Would you rather they put Faker on more of a hard carry and Kana on Ornn? I think the kind of solution they found out for their team is correct.
Depends how you want to play. Like, if I'm playing this series against Griffin, I probably would have I would even gamble on like triple damage comps and just fucking go early game. Like, I don't want to wait till the late game against Griffin. Why would I want to do that? I don't want to fucking scale.
Is there confidence in SKT to run over Griffin in the early game, even if they draft comps with a lot
I
of
think
priority?
you have to, because like for me, I've said this the whole time. This is why, in my opinion, MVP voting in every region is busted as fuck. Because you all keep thinking MVP. I don't know whoever thought this up was like above and beyond anything like Soviet fucking propaganda could ever have dreamed of with how effective it is. Whoever managed to convince normal people that MVP means the player who, if you removed them and replaced them, their team would do the worst, even though it's about being the best. I don't know how you convince people of that, but congrats, you have ruined MVP voting in every region. Because MVP, by definition, has to be the best player. That's why he's the most valuable. Like, logically, think about this, Loco. Imagine I was the best salesman in the world, right? I can sell a fucking 7 million units, right? But in this particular scenario, I work for a company where, you know, the company doesn't have distribution, so I can only sell 3 million units because we can't produce 7 million units, right? So I get to win best salesman over the guy who sells 20 million units, but he works for an org that can supply 20 million. Does that make any fucking sense? Of course not. How can I be the best salesman when I couldn't sell the most items? Like, by definition, I'm not the best salesman. That is the logic you are all using. So what I'm getting to here is, all this MVP shit and all this best player in the world means nothing, because the best player in the world is Tarzan, who plays for Griffin. And because he's the jungler, he amazingly, obviously he can't individually 1v9, like he can't kill everyone, but he basically can 1v9 the game. Like, this guy can control the entire game because he's the jungler and the best player in the world. So as a result, like, I don't know, if I'm playing against that player, the last thing I want to do is give this guy 35 minutes a game to figure out how to 1v9 my team. Like, that's the last thing I want to do.
I think for the whole MVP discussion, I think it's easily solved by just changing the name of the award to Player of the Split. Like, I'm not sure where MVP started. I know it came from traditional sport, but every league uses MVP when they mean Player of the Split. So I think just by changing the name to Player of the Split and awarding it that way should get rid of a lot.
Sure.
I know you had a lot of strong opinions on LCK MVP. Want to share?
Well, I think the MVP. Well, actually, no, I don't want to share.
You get fired, mate. So,
Yeah. Actually,
ignore that. What do you think about this topic with? What do you think about the topic with Tarzan and Griffin? Then?
Well, what I will say about this is that Griffin, if you look at mid and bot, you can make a pretty strong case that Chovy is the best mid, and then you can make a pretty and you can make a pretty strong case that Viper is right up there with Teddy in different ways.
I think if you add in the fact he plays the mages, you could make a case he's the best.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's not unfair.
And then Lehens is up there. Lehens is definitely up there. So the fact that Tarzan has such a strong, and also the way that the meta has strong bot and mid, lets him have a lot more freedom. I disagree with the Reddit. Now, obviously, I do agree that Tarzan's the best jungler in the world, but I entirely fucking disagree with all these donkeys that say that Chovy is not the best mid laner in the LCK and that he only looks as good as he does because he has Tarzan. It's like, holy fuck.
Well, who's the best mid
Well,
laner?
well,
Who's the
that's-
best
this is
mid
the-
laner in the alternate universe? Like who does?
No,
who
that's
does-
the problem, Loco. You've hit it completely. Is in past seasons, there'd be an interesting discussion to have. But the problem is, there's no other mid laners that have been that sick this split. Like Faker, as I said, he plays like supportive stuff half the time in SK Telecom. Pawn only got good at the end of the split, and he was still doing pawn things. Like, who are you gonna pick as that mid laner?
Yeah,
I don't know who else they want to pick.
I don't think there's a good candidate, and the only candidate that you could really force is Faker, and Faker has not looked great this split.
No, yeah. Chovy is level like if Chovy is an S plus, Faker's like an A plus, and then below Faker is like A minuses and Bs, and then you
Mid
dip
wasn't
into
that great in
Cs.
Korea.
Yeah, I don't even think you have to
This-
put.
Then you dip
split.
into
Yeah.
the fucking top laner. No, yeah, this has been a very weak mid split for Korea. This is a very you know what did show up really big though is top because
Of course, yeah.
Keen and Summit, I think, are the two best tops, and then comes Khan. Pretty sure it goes Keen, Summit, and then Khan.
The big problem is, like, if you're someone who didn't watch all of SK Telecom's games and you go to the old, let me just fire up the old Gamepedia and look at the stats, it's going to look amazing for Khan because he won a lot of the games where he wasn't that great on the champion because he was in SK Telecom and they won a lot of fucking best of threes. So, like, his record is going to look inflated. But when you watch the actual games, like as you say about Summit, like a lot of his team got worse as the split went on and his team's strength went down and down and down, but he was still good right to the very end.
For Keen, like being in the shithole that was Afrika, that was constantly role swapping, that was constantly putting out players, and like they were just a revolving door of players, and like every time they walk in through the revolving door, it seems like they were handed a note by the coach, and on the note it says, okay, today you're playing, and the role you're playing is jungle, and then next day Spirit comes in, and then he gets a note that says, okay, you're not playing. And then the team goes to shit. And on the third day when he comes in, the note says, oh, I'm playing. Okay, I'm going. And then he sits down in jungle seat. And then the coach is like, no, get up. You're playing support today. You
know what? That storyline you're talking... Oh, go on. Sorry, I didn't finish the story.
That's just been what Afrika has been. Like, it's been so random and there hasn't been continuity. Go ahead, Duncan.
If you put it this way, you're talking about the storyline. Everyone's like, "Oh, what if Keen to Griffin, Keen to fucking SK Telecom, mate? There's the game over right there. If you put Keen on SK Telecom, they will win the LCK. That'll be game over right there.
Yeah.
This is a guy I trust to carry the game each time.
I feel like Keen is the largest gap in any individual role that currently exists in the LCK. I would say Chovy Faker is probably the next one. Yeah, it's not even close. Keen's just way too good.
Well, what's so good about Keen is his consistency. I think we've seen super hard carry players before. We've seen Marin, we've seen Khan. Like, we've seen these players that can carry extremely hard, but they always came with the caveat of this player also has a tendency to die. Like, for the high ceilings they're going to bring, they're also going to bring low floors. Keen doesn't have any of that shit. He has the high ceiling without the low floor. Keen is so consistent amongst the shithole that is Afrika, and seeing him on Afrika and trying to carry that team has been pretty. It's been a waste of talent.
Fucking Goku. I had to squeeze that one in there for you, Thorin. I just had to get that one in.
Unreal, isn't it? Anyway, right, what about this then? So let's start setting up the final then. So first of all, does anyone actually have SK Telecom winning? Did anyone here pick SK Telecom?
No. Or no, I didn't.
Okay, so then the question is, why does Griffin win then?
I think that the meta is better suited for them. I think that they have better players. I want to say better players as a unit. Because you can make the argument between Teddy
I think
and
man
Viper.
for man, SK Telecom has better players, but I'd agree as a team. I think Griffin's a better team.
Yeah, man for man. I think you can make an argument that it's 3 for SKT and then 2 for Griffin. Mid and jungle is Griffin favored, and then you can make the argument that bot and top is SKT favored. Although I think that as a overall unit, I think Viper Lehens is more of a dynamic duo than Teddy Mata, in terms of iconic, sort of like Prey Gorilla, in a way, or something of that nature. But I think the meta is really good for Griffin. And I think that the ability to influence things right now from mid and jungle is also really good. So I'm just not impressed with SKT from the Kingzone series either.
I think when you think of weakness for SKT, it's their kind of inconsistency, their kind of, how to put it? Their kind of sometimes lack of firepower from certain roles, especially from mid and kind of from top due to the inconsistency of it. And then you look at Griffin, where they're weak, they're weak in top. And that outside of that isolated, like they can't carry from top, they're such a well-balanced team. And I think teams that have balance, I think teams that have depth have such a lead in finals. The only way Griffin loses is like through mental breakdowns. I think without mental breakdowns, there isn't a way that Griffin loses.
Like the other factor for me as well is like they're probably just like, if you've seen a lot of SKT games throughout history, you always want to believe there's like the Faker factor, like, oh, what if Faker just pops off and has like 3 amazing games? Like the way he has played this split, that isn't even his mentality. That is not the mindset that he has as a player. Like, listen, if certain champs are up, he'll play them, and he'll play them like, yeah, classic Faker, and he'll be aggressive. But a lot of the time, he is playing. Like, this is where that sort of, I've addressed this before, Loco. I hate that aspect where coaches keep drilling into players, like, be unselfish, just help your teammates, like be the guy who, like, you know, if you give up then we win as a team. It's like you don't want to tell the best player ever that, because like you don't want him to carry. Like, do you know how retarded it would be in basketball if you just told Michael Jordan to pass the ball all the time? It's like, what would the point be? What would the point be of doing that? He's the best scorer. Like, there's literally no point in telling him to do that. You want him to score. Yeah, you don't want him to go too far the other way and never pass the ball, only score. Like, that would be a detriment to the team. But you want to get, like, a happy balance. And in his particular case, the basketball analogy, it'd be on the scoring end still. So, like, I like the aspect that they do this sometimes with Faker. And if you saw Faker in Season 7 and Season 8, yeah, obviously he could be amazing playing Galio and all those sorts of champions, Rise. He could play around other people really, really well. But, like, now that he's got all the pieces, I'd rather they flex that a bit more, like go more into like having carry comps for him, because they've got the pieces elsewhere to do any comp they want, and they don't. So like I don't even see the outside puncher's chance for this one. Like I just see games in which SK Telecom is just going to lose like 3 or 4 team fights at 27 minutes into the game, and then they're going to lose the series either 3-0 or 3-1. I said 3-2 on Twitter because I think that like the ring rust aspect will probably mean Griffin won't be insanely sharp, but I think Griffin wins this series personally.
Damn. So from Korean like casters and also just Korean fan base thinking, they actually, a lot of people have SKT favor, and I think a lot of it is
on what basis though? Did they say any reasons?
The main basis they gave is part of like what you said, like SKT, the SKT being hot and Griffin having the ring rust. I forgot which caster it was, but they were listing like the names of Korean teams that have gone to internationals or that were really hyped up as a team and failed miserably, and it's important that Griffin learns from those teams and takes it really seriously.
For sure.
So because there's been a history of like uber hyped Korean teams, like in order of recency, like the KT, Mata, Deft, Smeb, UCal score lineup, like that one went to Worlds like and lost that game 5 versus IG, and then we didn't hear from them. The other infamous one is the Kingzone MSI one, where Kingzone going into MSI, the official description for them, and it's still quoted and it's still such a meme in Korea, is the question for Kingzone is whether or not they win MSI. The question is whether or not they drop a single game. And then there's the one with SKT beating, they beat RNG, and then they're facing Gen G, someone that they had their numbers on at World Finals, and they're like, people are already making fake Faker Galio skins, red team Galio skins after Faker carry versus RNG. There's been Korean casters. I
can't even believe this.
What? Korean casters.
I can't believe Korean casters are on the fucking Reddit narratives as well. Is everyone addicted secretly? Like, LS, pull up, show me, is there any track marks on your arm? Is everyone addicted to Reddit narratives? So don't tell me Korean casters who know the game better than anyone are using logic like, well, SK Telecom always has Gen G's numbers. Like, from years ago, what are you talking about? Like, in that tournament, SK Telecom was terrible.
Yeah. I actually talked about this in some of the LCK casts, where sometimes the narrative was brought up about like how, well, the previous 3 teams that went to Worlds are all now on the bottom of the standings, and I'm like, the fucking team name's the same. The players aren't.
I know.
Like, what the fuck? What kind of agenda? What is going on here?
Why don't we just take this further? Why don't we just descend into complete madness and start referring to players not by their name, but just going like, oh, of course, the Kingzone top lane, much worse this season. You know, past seasons, Kingzone top lane, much higher kill stats, a lot more carrying. It's like, it's a different player, you dumb fuck. It's like, no, here's the, the trend is that they're downtrending. You know, they used to play through them a lot more. It's like, are you fucking for real? What is this? What is this?
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
I'm not
you
sure
know the
what
reason why, look, I'm not exaggerating. This is the area that means I will always be able to do content that is borderline analytical in all these games. Because League of Legends, I know way less about than I know about CSGO. And even in CSGO, I don't know if you know this, all the other analysts who do events are all ex-pros. And in fact, most of them were in-game leaders. Like, they're all experts. But the reason why I still dummy these fucks live on cam is because they don't know how to think and how to explain themselves. Like, they know that in the game, this position should be played this certain way and moving it. But that has almost nothing to do with, like, analysing who's going to win a match. Winning a match isn't like the small micro adjustment angles. Like, no one can know those. There are a million variables that can play out. Winning a game is about analysing who will win a game is about constructing a model of who has what win conditions, where do your strengths match up, and then having like principles by seeing a lot of games that you know that this kind of a style tends to succeed against another style more often. And you add all these factors together, and at the end you come to like either a good reason or a good explanation for who will win. So there's plenty of people know all the ingredients. It's like being a chef who knows every ingredient, but he doesn't know how to mix them together, and he doesn't understand like what someone expects from a dish at the end. Like, it's amazing how many people are truly experts. Like, they know way more than me about the game, but they really fail when it comes to just like the basic analytical aspects, because that's its own game. In the same way you had to spend thousands of hours getting good at League of Legends and the information burden that you have across all the champions, you have to spend thousands of hours thinking about the game and how you construct your arguments and look that they're logical, and don't just say stuff like, well, 2 years ago SK Telecom won, so they've got the advantage now. That isn't even an analysis. That's literally just looking at like a tiny data sample size and going like, well, something happened 2 times, probably going to happen a third. It's like, you're a fucking bozo. If someone said that to me who's my hedge fund manager, I'd throw him out the fucking window.
I think casters are told to do something differently. I think casters are told to make sure...
Yeah, they're bitches. Exactly.
They're told to make sure there's a storyline. They're told, like, SKT and Griffin probably look like they have 50-50 chance.
And you know what? They failed utterly if that's what they do. Because you know what? When have I ever failed to have a narrative? When have I ever failed to have a good narrative for a match? Never happened, mate. Because you know what? The narrative... This is why Koreans don't understand esports. The narrative isn't fake imposed down from above. The narrative is you look at what is there and you draw the narrative out of it. So the narrative for this match here would be like, Griffin was the runners-up last season. Now they face a retooled SK Telecom who want to reclaim their glory. Can they continue their almost perfect season? Or does SK Telecom come back to create a new age of SK Telecom? Anyone who goes with the old narrative of like, it's SK Telecom, they're experiencing finals, will miss the narrative. They've made a fake narrative up. Like, that's a shit narrative. Narratives are, you know, this idea, this comes from LCS, by the way. This is what they used to do in those meetings midweek. They'd all sit around like fucking eggheads going, let's see, what are the narratives here? Well, you know, Fnatic wasn't that good last year. Can they do it this? Like, that's not a narrative. You don't think up the narrative. The narrative already is there. You're looking for the narrative. It's in the game. That's the end of that rant.
And anything else you want to touch on finals?
Listen, we'll see. We'll wrap up some finals topics now, and then we'll get into the juice.
Yeah.
So anything more about the finals? Okay, I've got one for you. Like, Loco, pick an MVP for both teams. So this is the player where if this player is the MVP, his team wins. Pick one for both.
If this player goes off, they'll win.
For both teams, though.
For Griffin? For Griffin, I actually think it's Chovy over Tarzan. If Chovy actually goes off, and if Chovy has the best day ever, I think that matters so much more for Griffin than it does for Tarzan having the best day ever. I think current meta, if mid lane is able to go off, like mid lane going off on stuff like Akali, mid lane going off stuff like Zoe, it's just crazy bullshit strong. So I'd go Chovy MVP.
And what about for the other team?
For SKT, if SKT wins, I think SKT wins super easy. It has to be Khan. If Khan has like the best day of his life, if Khan has like insane game, like the best, like literally the best game of his life, the best series of his life, then that's the way SKT wins. I don't think it'll be through mid or jungle. I don't think it'll be through AD bot lane. It'll be through top.
Who do you think, LS?
I actually think Viper. And the reason that I think Viper is because with Sylas and Lissandra both being in the meta and we'll see if they get let through. There's Chovy's willingness to also play Galio. There's Chovy's willingness to play Sion. There's Chovy's willingness to probably play Nautilus right now.
Yes.
There's his willingness to play so many tanks, and I just don't know his level of influence if he's going to go into that role. So I think it's Viper, because I think if Viper gets really far ahead, he's already so clutch even when he doesn't have resources, and he's so effective at doing stuff that if Teddy is behind, I think that Teddy in the Kingzone series literally looked like Janair Teddy reconnected, because he was trying to drag them across the finish line. If Teddy isn't in the series, then I think SKT just loses, even if Khan is big. And that's because I fully trust that Khan will find ways to throw away the lead. So, yeah, for Griffin, I think it's Viper, and actually on the same note, for SKT, I think it's Teddy. I think that they're both keys for both teams.
The worst thing about the Khan angle is this guy actually has his own history in finals, multiple finals.
I just want to chime in that people can't. I'm one of the biggest Khan supporters ever, right?
Okay.
So I don't know how people are going to accuse me of fucking bias now, assholes.
Listen, I thought on Kingzone he was a very good player, but I will say, even on Kingzone, he had games in finals where he just fucked up completely. So he also has a mad tilt factor at play there. So like that already worries me. So I would say for SK Telecom, I'll actually say Teddy as well, because the thing for me is, like, I don't know that he's going to play bad. I think he's played pretty well the whole time in SK Telecom, but if he can't get activated, that means they lost the first 20 minutes, so the game's over at that point in time. So has to be Teddy. He has to go ham. For Griffin, I'll still say Tarzan. I kind of agree with the analysis so far, but the reason I say Tarzan is, in a world, like, this is one of the factors as well that is how things play out. Mm-hmm. In all games, I think you should treat finals differently from any other match. Sure, playoffs is more pressure than the regular split, but finals is totally different pressure to semifinals. That's why this is an interesting detail. You want to go back and look in history. You know those players in StarCraft called the Kongs, the people who always finish second place? Their problem isn't high-pressure matches. They're some of the best semi-final players to ever play their games. Like, you go and look at Stork, fucking Sue. These guys win semi-finals, like, easy. They can even play a guy in a semi-final who beat them in the last final and dust this motherfucker off. Semi-finals are high pressure, but the problem is in the final, it is the ultimate pressure. And you can't replicate that. There's no practice room environment. There's no fucking Star Trek The Next Generation holodeck environment, like the Danger Room in fucking X-Men. You can't recreate that pressure. You can only create it by being there. So unfortunately, it's the hardest learning curve in the world. If you have problems in finals, you can only overcome it by getting to another final and literally not having that problem again. So anyone who has those problems, you should actually bank against that guy until he shows you otherwise. Because if you look at the history of esports, people who fail in those scenarios, you're usually beating yourself as much as the other guy beats you. It's not that he just plays a 10 out of 10 and you play a 9 out of 10. It's like, even if he played a 7 out of 10, you'd find a way to get to a 5 out of 10. That's the difference. So I'm already worried for Khan in that respect. Like, he has to do so much on this team. So I will actually say Teddy for SK Telecom, and I think Tarzan for Griffin, because in a world where Tarzan goes off in the final, that is the ultimate solution to tilt. That is the ultimate solution to fear, is to have my jungler be the guy popping off, doing super well in the game. Right. Because if you think about how many finals, they start off in the game and all of a sudden everyone's super passive. No one wants to go for those crazy plays. No one's trying to invade. No one's trying to do any of that shit. They're all trying to sit in their lane going, I'm not going to be the guy who dies in the first 15 minutes. If your jungler is going off, think of the confidence you're going to have to go for those players, to get those kills, to do the sick tower dives that we all love to see from Korean players. Like, that's the game winner for me. If they do that Griffin wins this one, it's sweet as fuck. So there's mine. There we go. Right. I think we do this now. We pivot over, even though this was an LCK episode, we pivot over to the fucking Twilight Zone. Imagine a man. His name is Nick DeCesare. Is he Korean? Does he want to be Korean? No one will know until the end of the story, because for right now, he exists in an alternate universe in which Jin Air would fuck up G2 Esports. Yes. No, the same universe that we're in, G2 Esports, champions of Europe. He will fuck them up in a match, right? Come on, LS. We've all been leading to this. We've hyped it. We've set up the tables set. We've got the meat and the veg, the mustard, the salt, we've got the wine. Everything's ready. The entrees have all been served. Like, explain to us what the hell you meant by this comment. Because I thought that people were just strawmanning you. Like they were like, oh, because how they do that. Plebs always have to strawman because they themselves don't know how to argue real points. So rather than argue oh, I think the fourth best Korean team would still beat the best LEC team. They're always like, oh, I bet you think that the worst LCK team would beat them, wouldn't you?
Okay.
And you were basically like, I do. And then everyone was like, oh God, help. So come on, set this up for us.
Wait, so for me,
why would?
Wait,
yeah.
So for me, I thought it was just a hot take. I thought LS said it in the moment of it, like to argue with a viewer, to argue with someone, or even just for views. I thought it was a hot take. And then LS crushed that idea that it was a hot take. He doubled down on Twitter. He's like, no, it was not a hot take. I actually believe this. Like, now we have to hear it.
All right, well, come on.
All right. So this is gonna be a long answer. So
why would the Krillin of the LCK beat the fucking Goku of the LEC? Come on.
All right. So fucking Christ. All right. So I'm gonna start off by saying this, that if hypothetically a chess grandmaster and a chess master player had a conversation, and a regular chess viewer listened to both of them. If the chess grandmaster asserted that doing this move is correct, and the chess master said that that move was wrong and this move is correct, the average viewer is incapable of knowing which one of the two is actually correct. They do not possess the ability to know, and not even to know which one is right or wrong, but to be in the ballpark to maybe perhaps understand which one could be right or wrong. Yeah. And so this is a bit of a conundrum where people like myself who are so willing to speak honestly without this PR, this PC bullshit nonsense, can find myself in a situation like this all too often on fucking Twitter or on Reddit or in YouTube videos or on talk shows like this. So I have these fucking asshats that all that they can do is suck their goddamn stats down their throat. And they'll try to reference me, Worlds or something from 2018, or they'll try to reference how G2's doing so well in Europe and how Jin Air and KT are fucking losing. Then I'll segue this into the other thing. I find it so interesting that people are like, oh, LS said that KT and Jin Air, would beat G2 and whatnot. What about the 5 Korean challenger players and the 2 Western challengers in the same goddamn clip that said the same fucking thing for the same goddamn reasons? I guess they're all just in on it. They're all
wait. So
who said
wait, no. I have to. What is it? I have to touch on this.
I didn't hear this. No, but wait a second. Who was it who said that? Who was that?
The BBQ players and the 2 Western players here.
Those are also
the people on your team.
Ellis.
Yeah, but they're not. They're not in on. These are the same people that I've had huge arguments on my stream with before. The fact that this notion that they wouldn't disagree with me is so preposterous, because there have literally been stream clips and highlights of us getting into it over game things. So the fact that they're just on fucking payroll and that they're all just being convinced. Now, he watches LEC and LCS. Obviously, the Western players watch both. Some of the BBQ players watch LEC and LCS. And when these assholes come in, they're like, KT and Jin Air, they would never be able to beat G2. Who the fuck do you even... you don't even know what you're looking at on the fucking screen. And this sort of segues all the way back into the fucking meme that, about you don't understand what makes a player good by their mouse movements, right? Like how the way that the champion moves and yada, yada, yada. Because even a diamond player can't tell if they're watching a master player or a challenger. They can't tell if they're watching a challenger or a pro player because they don't possess enough knowledge to know. So they sit there and they hug their fucking stat lines and like, G2's doing so well in Europe and yada, yada, yada. But what they don't see is poor engages. What they don't see is that champions didn't utilize the most of their ability in certain situations. What they didn't see was the rotation that existed 30 seconds prior. What they don't see is the failure or the inability to coordinate basic Baron plays or basic rotations to end a game. What they don't see is Fnatic fumble over themselves for 30 fucking minutes, and yet people are saying that Fnatic's this amazing team. What they don't see is that Jin Air Green Wings and KT Rolster found themselves in winning spots against some of the best LCK teams that field better players than some of these teams pound for pound, And it took those Korean teams to wiggle their way out of rough spots.
Let me ask you a follow-up question then.
Well, the fact that Jin Air is this dog shit garbage is just untrue. Watch
What
their
about this?
fucking games. But I can't tell someone to watch their fucking games,
Yes.
right? Because that's the chess grandmaster telling the 800 ELO or 800 MMR player, and even if the chess GM tells us 1600 or 1800, that player can't fucking do it either.
Let me ask you this follow-up question then, because the semantics are very, very important here. When you said Jin Air could beat G2, well, first of all, G2 did end up losing games to bad teams anyway. Jin Air, you are right. This is it. You notice, Loco, I'm so fucking good at speculating on what people think. Like, I told you this is what LS thought. That if I reverse engineered it, his logic would be, well, Jin Air was in a good spot against, like, Griffin, for example. So that if they played that out against a weaker team, they win the game. I told you exactly that's what you would think. And the reason, this is my question, though, this is the key part, is when you said they could beat G2, do you mean as in it's just possible? Like, G2 would still be, like, what, 70%, 80% favourite, but... how is this working out? That's probably more important.
I elaborated that in the clip, which is why I find it so weird that people construct it to fit their narrative of me, that I'm being delusional.
Well, I will say, Ellis, one problem about this that I will say is a problem is this is why hot takes exist. Because if you do one tweet and you do one clip and there's a follow-up clip, I'd go ahead and say like 20% of the people who saw the original thing see the follow-up. You know what I mean? Like that's why even if you do a tweet thread, mate, people just see the first tweet and they ignore the other tweets. I even use it to my favor, by the way. So I'll give you an example. In CS:GO, we had a team that was like a really sick underdog story. They went from being number 13 in the world before the major to some people thought they were like the number 2. Some people thought they were like the number 2 team in the world at this last tournament. And I personally thought that made them overrated. Like, actually, they were realistically, the 4th or 5th best team. And that's with, like, other factors. Like, we haven't seen them play enough to know if they're going to get figured out. So what I did was I didn't do a tweet that said, this team's overrated because of these reasons, and here's why. I did a tweet that just said, this team is the most overrated team in the world. And then I waited 5 minutes, and then I posted a follow-up tweet that was like, for these reasons, I judge them to be like that. Because I know that most people won't see the first tweet. So I want morons to see the first tweet and go, what the fuck? Hot take, most overrated team in the fucking world. How can this be? They're so great. He's saying they're bad. I want them to do that. That's my engagement. I'm going to get a million replies, a Reddit thread, fucking people. He doesn't know anything about the game. And then here's what's great. Because I did give the follow-up, all the people who are intelligent are going to go, no, you guys are idiots. Look, in the follow-up, he said this and he explained it. They're doing all my work for me. They're doing damage control for me. I get the maximum spread of the A-bomb of stupidity, but then I get all the credibility from the people who matter. And the space in between is what I call the money zone. That's where I extract all the cash from. So anyway, back to you.
No, I mean, it's not that far-fetched to make this claim. And what I said later on in the clip is that Jin Air could give them a run for their money, but that G2 would be slightly favored against Jin Air. I did say that KT would have a positive win rate. I'm not saying that it would be this enormous win rate. It would be clean, decisive 3-0s and a best of 5 or anything like that. I'm just saying KT and Jin Air could beat them. KT probably more so than Jin Air, but KT would probably field a positive win rate against them.
If KT and G2 played 100 games, it would come down to 50-50 or like 60 or 55-45
like 60-40
for KT.
60-40, maybe 65-35
for KT.
Yeah.
65...
Loco, this is like the fucking Matadors waving this red flag in your face. He's like, this is a red flag, Loco. Do you like red?
What makes these Korean teams bad, right? They're finding themselves in these spots in games against players who are macroing better, or these elite, the East and the West teams, right? And you get into so many of their games, and you can see teams like SK Telecom doing very poorly. You can see teams like Kingzone and stuff, but it's the amount that those spots end up occurring within all of their games. Jin Air was not just getting run over inside of the laning phase and bending over and keeling over and dying. Mm-hmm. They also were not living up to strictly the Jin Air meme of, stall the game for 40 minutes and do nothing. No, absolutely not. Root and Kellen looked like one of the strongest fucking bottom lanes actually in Korea towards the second half. Yeah. Root looks amazing. Root is phenomenal. And Jin Air and ADC is named a more iconic duo, but it's like having to listen to these fucking people that they can't even tell me why in the first place G2 is good without being like, but my stats, as they fucking stutter to get it out of their goddamn mouth. They accuse me of not watching LEC. Haha, I do, asshole, sometimes. But they've never watched LCK. You just know that they've never watched the LCK, because if they did, and if they had a brain and it was located within their skull, fucking firmly, they would probably be able to deduce that it's not that far-fetched of a proposal to say that these two teams could probably do well if you're actually watching Honest League of Legends. But I mean, the whole thing that tilted me is I wasn't even the first one that said that Jin and KT could beat G2. It was actually 2 Korean players, and then I chimed in, saying that I agree.
I mean, to be fair, no one gives a fuck what those Korean players think.
Of course not.
I'm just going to say.
So,
I also think it's hard to grasp because Jin and KT have been really, really shitty throughout the season, and for people to think like
Wait a minute, Loco. No, I'm not going to let you do this. You're going to like partially agree with him and buffer what he just said. You don't agree with him at all, you cocksucker. Just
of course I don't. No, of course I don't fucking agree. But
so then let's go back. Come on then. Say your side.
For Jin and KT, for people to disagree, I see where it's coming from, and because if LF actually watched both, LEC for G2 has been a slight downturn until they played the OG series where they got their upturn again. They look really clean again. And as for Jin sure, go ahead.
I just want to chime in really quick. So there's a lot of people in the chat, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of Reddit comments and YouTube comments about this. Someone's saying that I am not actually saying anything other than that someone can't understand why. Well, here's the fucking conundrum that I just stated with chess. How can I explain it to you in a way that you could actually digest that could not then just be dismissed by someone that also...
It's like there's a famous quote. There's a famous quote.
I can't fucking explain it to you, asshole.
There's a famous quote that comes from the world of physics, right? That says something along the lines. I can't remember what the actual example is, but I'll give you a gist of it. And it goes like this: to create a donut, you must first create the entire universe first. So the idea would be, to explain this point, you would have to take someone from zero knowledge to the maximum knowledge to understand everything about the game, to then at the very end understand why what you said meant what it said. Because everything you say carries with it implied knowledge of what a concept is and what this player's ranking is. And the problem is, if the fan only has the LCK standings to go off and the fact that they've seen Caps win all these MVPs or whatever, and you're like, if they only have those factors to go off, it'll never make sense, because narratives can't make sense like that. The narrative is supposed to come out of the fact. That's why I told you, never impose it down.
Right, and I don't want to. I mean, it's bizarre because if not even a chess grandmaster, if a chess master or an IM asserted a move, and you're just a random bystander, you wouldn't just say...
I can give you an example, LS. So there's a guy who plays chess on a stream. I don't know if he streams on YouTube or Twitch or what. I can't remember his name now, but he's like a famous guy in the chess world who's like just a high ELOG player. He's not like a super duper like top pro or anything. He's just like a guy who teaches people, and he plays on his stream. And when he plays on his stream, he plays like speed chess, where you just like, you have to go very quickly and you have a total time bank of what moves you can do. You don't have like a same for every move. You have like a total time bank you're working with, right? And when he was playing on his stream, he didn't know it, but he actually ended up getting queued against Magnus Carlsen, who is the best chess player in the world, but on a Smurf account. And so here's the thing that happens, right? When he's playing, because not only is he playing chess against Magnus Carlsen, he's playing speed chess, so he doesn't have that time to stop and think for a long time. Like, what is this guy doing? So what happens is, when you play out speed chess, a lot of it's going to just be by rote, basically. Like, they do this, I do this. They do this, I do this. And what happens is, he's constantly just getting owned by every move. Now, he doesn't say, Loco, I think I'm playing like a better player than me, somebody who's better. He actually just keeps saying comments like, this seems like a silly move he's doing here. Like, no, this doesn't make sense what he's doing here. And it's like, what that actually shows you when at the end you know it's Magnus Carlsen isn't even that this guy's wrong. If he was playing worse players, he's right. What they would be doing wouldn't make sense. That they would be doing inferior moves. But because that player is on a much, much higher metagame theory level than him, to him they don't make sense, the moves, because he isn't on that level.
It's a conundrum though, because what you said is that each individual move comes with implied knowledge. So I cannot simply assert Root and Kellen have a better bottom lane than G2. I can't simply assert that, because then someone says, oh, well, why is Root and Kellen better? They play their champions better. Oh, why do they play their champions better? they have a higher mechanical ceiling. Why is their mechanical ceiling higher? How do you want me to explain it to you? Can you fucking go queue up in Gold 2 again? But even this argument, it happens with Masters and Diamond players too. The fact that this notion that it is somehow easy to explain over a season's worth of games is going to be easily digestible to the common bystander, to the common viewer, is absolutely preposterous. And it's just a fucking coincidence that these type of long-winded and heated arguments don't often occur with people that they hold up on pedestals.
Yes.
Right? Which is why I'm alluding to. Do you think 5 Korean challenger players and 2 Western challengers are just in on it? They're just fucking paid.
Oh, okay. So let's go to that point.
Obviously, that could be an appeal to authority, right? That could be.
It's not an appeal.
The thing they're using is an appeal to authority to dismiss my claims. Oh, Perks would disagree with you. Oh, this player would disagree with you. Okay, well, what about all the fucking EU pros when I did do the tier list that did agree with me? They're all just appeals to authorities, you asshats. You don't have the knowledge to know who is right or wrong. But you don't even have the knowledge to be in the right goddamn ballpark, so just don't even comment.
So
why is that so hard?
Do comment. We need the engagement. We love that flame. Bring that flame.
Let's let the followers keep going up.
I love how you say 5 Korean challengers. They're not random 5 Korean challengers like on separate teams.
Yeah, I get that.
You shouldn't say 5 Korean challengers because that paints a completely different picture than saying BBQ players. And when you say 2 Western challengers, it should also be the 2 BBQ Western challenger, or the 2 BBQ Western players, because that's who they are, right? And
I'll give you a counterpoint, okay, Alex. I'm not saying this is the case, right?
One of the Koreans is not a part of BBQ. He's just living here.
Right.
Okay.
And he's only been living here for 2 weeks.
I will just say this, though. Here is what the obvious counterpoint would be. And I'm not saying this is the case, but the reason why the players saying it isn't as convincing, like I'd leave that part out if I were you, Ellis, and just make your case for yourself. The reason why it's not as convincing the players think that is I can tell you from every scene in the world in esports,
right,
the person who's at the bottom of the best scene always justifies it in their mind. Like, well, yeah, I'm getting shit on, but you know what? I bet I would shit on the best from the other. Like, they always do that. Like, they always want to believe, like, listen, we're getting banged, but you know what? I bet if we played those fucking LCS teams, we'd wreck them. It's like that's just a natural way of thinking. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, by the way, but I'm just saying that would be very easy for someone to put forward. So the difference is, in theory, that shouldn't be the case for you.
Right, and I know that some people will segue this into like, oh, well, BBQ finished 5th, and I'm like, okay, well, look at the standings and the point difference. Look at the fact that we started 0-4 because one of our main players were suspended. Why were they suspended? Okay, and then they segue into ad hominem. And then the same logic I said at the very beginning of the show. You do not call the Gen G or the Misfits coach shit because either team took a nosedive at specific points. You would not say that Coma is shit if SK Telecom is struggling at certain points.
Of course.
So you can't attack BBQ standings as a means to discredit anything that I'm trying to claim. But anyways, the whole problem is that it comes full circle, and this is why I tend to not like making these types of... I mean, I think that this is why a lot of people don't like to make these comments, is because they don't want to deal with the bullshit and the heat that can come with them, which is why most...
The only person I'm aware of who ever made a comment like this in the past was Monty, where he had a similar perspective. If you went right back to Season 3, he used to say that if you took, like, he didn't say the last place, he said, you know, like, let's say, like, the 6th best Korean team, he said that they would win LCS, basically. And it was for similar reasons. He was trying to make a point about the strength of the regions and the game knowledge, etc.
So the whole thing on this for me is it ridiculous that these people that accuse me of bias would conveniently all have G2 flares on Reddit, are trying to dismiss whatever I'm saying based on some belief or faith that they have that they don't have anything to substantiate it with other than stats. And if we assert that there are people that are much higher than them that might be inclined to agree with said claims or disagree, whatever, they should still also acknowledge that they don't have the ability to possess who is right or wrong.
Sure.
But it's very bizarre and alien to me to think that simply because I don't know what is right or wrong, that I would be able to easily side or claim that someone is right or wrong. That's just really weird to me.
Right, Loco, here's my suggestion. We're obviously not going to debate this because, like, I mean, he's pretty much laid out like this. No, so I think we do this instead. We just take turns to make our points. Okay. So Ellis has made some points, you make some points.
So My thing is, I get where LS is coming from the context of the games that are being played in LCK, and also Jin Air bot lane has been on such a rise, and they were solo queue superstars, and they did not look like that at the beginning of the split, and then they've been on a rise, so there is missing context for Western viewers where they think of Jin Air as the 0-14 team, as like the absolute garbage team, and then LS is, so there's G2, the best team in Europe, versus Jin Air, the absolute garbage team in LCK. While they still are last, like they climbed up a bit and they look better, and they're not the Jin Air, the shitty, sad plain Jin Air that you guys think them of. But when LS is making his argument, what I disagree with is kind of the context for it. So Jin Air has been in shitty macro situations or difficult macro situations, and can put that onto Griffin or can put that onto other Korean teams, where G2 has made mistakes in EU versus EU teams, where EU teams weren't playing at the absolute top tier level. One thing that you constantly get when you get into international competition and once you let the team scrim, it normalizes a lot, and also teams get very good at beating teams in their region and contesting versus teams in their region due to the amount of time they play versus them, and due to just like the whole point of an LCK team is to win an LCK, and then after that be the best team in the world. The whole point of G2 is to be the best team in Europe. Holy shit, the best team in Europe, and then win in Europe. I think if you put G2 and Jin Air right now, and let them play, I have no doubt that G2 will eventually come out ahead, because G2 is able to accomplish these kind of things in Europe, and that kind of skill level and that kind of excellence required to rise to the top, something that Jin Air hasn't been able to show. If Jin Air, okay, let me put it better. If Jin Air and G2 played in the same league and you started the season over again, let's say Jin Air flew over to LEC and then you played the season over again, I think G2 would place above Jin Air. And even if you do the rebirth and you send G2 to LCK and you let them play out, like instead of, let's say KT didn't exist and G2 played in LCK, I think they would place higher than Jin Air does. But that's my point. If you let them play out in the same league, G2 will always end up higher than Jin Air, because the ability required to place highly in a league isn't directly the ability required for Jin Air and G2 to match up.
Okay, I've got 4 points here. I was letting you guys go. I thought, well, I'll try and do them in the right order to make sense for everything, right? So first of all, before we go to the specific teams, Jin Air, G2, and what would happen there, I'll make 2 points that are more about how fans think about things that I want to make a quick point of. So number one is, I made this point on the veteran episode, that one of the wackest ways to possibly try and join a debate is to be a spectator of the debate and then to wait until you see one weakness and to dive in there and be like, see, that one weakness means this guy knows nothing and I know everything. It would be the equivalent, right, to if you could watch a boxing match and then when you see one of the boxers is almost knocked out, you were allowed to just run in the ring and knock him out and go, see, I did that. I won the fight. It's like, well, you didn't do any of the build-up, did you? And that's the assumption that people make on Reddit and Twitter. They sit back and every great point you make, this is actually the flaw of being really good at making a good point, is when you make a good point, you don't make the point in your mind, you set up the conditions in the other person's mind, they follow your logic along, they make the leap at the end within the logic, and they come to the same conclusion. That's why they agree with you. So the problem is, when you do that, you give someone else the feeling that they did it in their brain. So they think, well, yeah, that's a good point, but it's obvious. I understood it. It's like they never would have made that point. They never could have constructed that, followed the logic through. So they're thinking they made the same point as you. Then you make a point they disagree with, and they go, see, this is absolute nonsense. He doesn't know anything. Like a very quick side point to this would be, if you ask the average person on the street, what do they think of the work of Sigmund Freud? The world famous like psychiatry guy or whatever it was his field was, right? Most people say, Freud, wasn't he all just debunked and a lot of mad ideas about having sex with your mother or something? Now, what they're saying in saying that, Loco, is exactly what I just described. Because most of Freud's ideas, the concept of having an ego, what the role of the id is, suppressed desire, is the fact that sexual desire impacts other aspects of your life. These are all widely accepted among everyone in all of Western culture. So the person disagreeing doesn't know that they're basically saying, oh, you know, all those points that he made that was so good, I just accept them as a given. Yeah, they're all obvious. But the thing he said I don't agree with is wrong. They're only looking at the points he made that seem wrong. They don't know when he was right. So first of all, there's that aspect. So nobody, as I said on the veteran episode, nobody watching this, nobody on Twitter who thinks thinks they're going to bag on them, you aren't even in the debate. Like, you're just a spectator. So best case scenario, you're just banging on the fucking glass at the hockey stadium. That's it. You aren't on the field. You can never score a goal. That's game over. Second point is this, is when people watch and they debate like this with someone like LS, they get to feel smart because since LS is the expert, he's the one answering the question. As the person asking the question, you always have an innate advantage. Because say I asked LS a question right now, yeah, but what about this? And he answers it really well. I don't seem like I lost because I asked the question, do I? He answered it well. But actually, if my implication in the question was wrong, I did lose. He beat me. The difference is I can then just go, yeah, but what about this instead then? And now he has to immediately answer it. Yeah, but what about that after that? And it seems like, oh, he's got him on the run now. No, I'm asking the questions. That's the point. If this was actually a fair discussion, what would happen is this. And by the way, I'll be any fan in this chat, in any fucking Reddit forum ever. Bring them on the show, give them a 10-minute slot, and all that happens is this. For every question they ask, I get to ask a question. Because if I'm allowed to ask a question back to that guy and say to them, will you explain to me why you think that then? They would collapse instantly. They would have nothing. They wouldn't be able to explain any of their points. Even when they'd said something we all agree with, like, oh, I think G2 have better laners. You'd go explain how they have better laners. CS gold at 15, like they'd revert to some, they wouldn't have anything to say. So anyway, those are the two meta points. Now there's 2 points related to this actual topic that I think will be interesting for people. One is I feel really bad for everyone in League of Legends because you have all never actually experienced proper international competition. Now, you're all going to think, what are you talking about, though? We've seen all those worlds, all those MSIs, right? You do realize the amount of worlds and MSIs you've had in the entire history of League of Legends is the amount of, like, true international tournaments you get in 1 year of CSGO or Dota 2. Like, that's how many times in CSGO and Dota 2 the best teams in the world all come to one tournament and play. And so as a result, I can tell you as a factual principle, here's how it goes in those games where you meet 1 million times during the year. You get a team that was at a lower level. No one knows how good they are. No one's played them very much. You play them in the odd throwaway game. They come to the big tournament and everything goes great. A player plays way above the level he's supposed to. Their style, people haven't figured it out. They have a draft pick in this example that's really great. And what happens is people go, oh my God, they're the new real shit. They're going to be a new top team. Now in League of Legends, that was Worlds. That's the end. They're new top team. They were the 3rd best team of the year. Congrats to them. And they go home. Do you know what happens in CSGO? You can probably guess, Loco. What do you think happens in CSGO after
They're
this?
the new best team.
No,
That's
they
what
go
people
to the
think.
next. They go to the next tournament and they get found out. Like, if they really were that good, it happens every now and then. You obviously get a team like Griffin that rises up out of nowhere and becomes really good. But you also get teams that are just flash in the pan, don't they? They have like 6 weeks where they're good. They have a month where they're good. What happens is that team goes to 5 more tournaments with all the best teams. All the best teams now focus on them. People now know how they play. Someone might even have lost to them last time and knows how to play against them. And they just go back down the standings. They go to 9th, they go to 11th. And if they're not good, they disappear again. That can never happen in League of Legends. So the reason I'm saying this now is because everyone's going to use the final judgment, whatever happens at Worlds. So if G2 comes top 4 at Worlds, everyone's going to go, LS doesn't know what he's talking about. No, that's one example. That's such a shit sample size. It's unreal. Like, if you, by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. If you think in 2018, Cloud9 over all of 2018 was a better team than a Freak of Freaks, I'm not going to say uninstall your computer, like delete the BIOS, etc. I want you to stay on our channel. I want you to comment as much as possible. I want you to get a lot of stupid-ass arguments, drive that engagement up. We'll make money off it, and we will all laugh at you behind the scenes because you were a fucking cretin. Like, the same Cloud9 team had to go through the gauntlet. The same Cloud9 team barely beat TSM that was bad. The same Cloud9 team almost lost to Gambit in a best of 5. Yeah, you know what? Great job. They managed to beat a Freaker one day in their miserable worm-like lives. They managed to show the mirage of being a god. And the very next day, Bwipo fucking shat down your throats. There we go. That's your life if you're Cloud9. From Gambit beatings to Fnatic crushings. That was, and in the meantime of being fired out of your mother's uterus towards death, you managed to accomplish one thing. You ruined Keen's day. That's it. He had a bad day. That's all you did. You didn't do anything else. You didn't do anything special. That's it. End of story. Now, the last point to make is this. About G2, if they played Janair, I don't actually buy this angle that they'd like have a losing win rate. Like, I don't think so. And I definitely don't think so for KT Rose. Here's why. This is my counterpoint to LS. The biggest flaw Koreans have is they try to play correct League of Legends, which is whatever the meta game is at that one point in time, they try to master the meta game because it makes you most likely to win the World Championship and to win the Korean League. The problem with that is you will actually occasionally give teams breathing room because it's not correct to take a gamble fight and kill them off in the game. There is one area where G2 would fucking destroy these Korean teams. When this team goes, like, oh, I'm in a favorable scenario if I just play the macro out, G2 will just engage on them, have a team fight, kill them, and that will be the end of the game. Now, that wouldn't be the correct move to do. The correct way to win the game would be to play it safe, take all the towers, take the Baron, take the dragons, get the big lead, take the right fight, and end the game. G2 would just take the team fight and win the game. So in that scenario, I agree with most of Alice's points. I just think in this specific case, that's the difference in the regional matchup. And that's also why Western regions are going to look way worse than Korea, because the teams that are lower almost know this. They know that your only chance to win is to gamble. They know you can't just play out perfect macro against Team Liquid and beat them if you're fucking Optic Gaming. Your only chance is to go balls deep on these motherfuckers. It's the same reason why I told Giotto on this show that if Team Liquid played his team Origin, I think they'd dust him off. I think his team would suddenly find none of that shit worked.
You know what's so preposterous, right? Is the assertion that or not preposterous, but the assertion that G2 could take an incorrect or a reckless team fight that Jin Air isn't prepared for in the game is something that I can reasonably see happening. Like that, sure. G2 aren't terrible players. They're not by any means. So I can totally envision stuff like that. I mean, we saw Afrika handshake fights that they shouldn't have at Worlds and thus lost to Cloud9. So the fact that Jin Air also equally couldn't take bad team fights that they shouldn't. I mean, we saw SK Telecom doing it against Kingzone last week. It's just how often will such things happen, which is why I do say that Jin Air is not favored against G2 in 100 game series, but I do think that KT is.
All right, go ahead. For the KT angle, I still want to go back to the context of things. If I think KT can look better than G2 right now, especially playing in Korea, especially kind of the macro questions that are answered. I think KT can definitely look better than G2 right now. But what I differ on is just the context of how you should be playing in LCK and how you should be playing in LEC. If these two teams played in the same league, let's delete Jin Air LF and let's say G2 played in LCK throughout the whole year or throughout the whole split. Do you think
this is a good point?
Do you think KT or G2 would be rated higher, or would be placed higher if they played in the same league?
I think G2. Yeah, I think G2 would be in relegations.
Below KT. I mean, KT's also in relegation.
I think the point Loco's making here, LS, is kind of like my point about how the regions play, right? So his basic argument is this: if G2 played in LCK for the whole split, obviously they would adapt to the meta in the LCK, right? They wouldn't just play how they play in LEC. And his logic is, since they've got good players, surely they would then be better in LCK than they would be versus an LCK team playing in LEC. That's the point, right, Loco?
Yeah, and also G2's playstyle is a product of playing in LEC and playing to beat the best LEC teams possible.
Right.
And that might not look as clean as KT, but vice versa. If G2 was in LCK, their playstyle would also look different. And same thing for KT if they played in LEC. So my question to you is, if G2, as a team, they played in LCK, you think they would be rated below KT? You think they'd be 10th, KT 9th?
I think G2, KT, Jin Air, and Afrika, if they kept the season the way that they did this season, would all be in the relegation contention thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the bottom four. What is it? Where the top,
the bottom three, bottom four are all really close. Yeah, I think that's what would end up happening. And I'm not saying that G2 don't have really good players. Gen G has really good players. Gen G has Ruler. You might have heard of him. Afrika has Keen. You might have heard of him if you're fucking listening from Twitch chat. They also have other players that are really good, or they're supposed to be superstars from solo queue. But it's not like these teams have terrible players.
But they have terrible cohesion, and they have terrible kind of end product.
KT had Score, BDD, Smeb, and Kingun. Couldn't do anything. They had Snowflower come in the support role. These aren't no-name trash cans. These are elite-level players. Then you look at Jin Air. They had Root and Kellen. Yes, they were, they're having some issues there, and mid, top, and jungle. But, I mean, it's just such a weird argument because it goes into the same thing.
There's one other point. Go on.
My core of the argument is not that KT, Gen G or Africa doesn't have doesn't have good players. They do have great players. They couldn't get their shit together as a team throughout the season. And G2 also has great players, and they got their shit together throughout the season. Like, if G2's in Korea and forced to answer like Korean kind of League of Legends, forced to answer Korean way of playing, they will adapt and they will like do that as a team, and they've shown the ability to do that in Europe. Vice versa for KT, vice versa for Jin Air, for Gen G, or even Africa, they haven't been able to be cohesive as a team or find a playstyle that works for them. And it's always been revolving door of players for Africa. For Jin Air, it's been like some god-awful mistakes, like some mental breakdown, like the Herald cancellation and the bot lane not coming online until end of the season. Like, it is like a lot of hypothesis, but if G2 played in Korea, like, they would be able to beat these teams because of so much of the problems that they were having and the kind of cohesion that G2 was able to show in Europe. So we can disagree on it, and it is hypothetical, but I completely disagree that G2 would place below these dysfunctional teams in Korea if they played in LCK this split.
We have to look at how they're dysfunctional, though.
And they're dysfunctional in a way where, like, Africa can't even find the five-man roster that works for them. Like, they're rotating players all around in different positions. Like, Jin Air is...
Well, I have more private context on that, but I can't talk about it.
Okay. And then Jin Air...
I don't think Africa... Yeah, God, sorry.
And Jin Air is having problems, like, just using Herald. And then I will give you the point, their bot lane looked so much better. Their bot lane looked like their solo queue status, like how great they were in solo queue towards the end of the season. But if G2 and Jin Air play throughout the season, like, Jin Air would have been getting crushed throughout the early season by everyone, G2 included. So, yeah, for a lot of these teams, like, I just cannot fathom them doing better than G2 if they played in the same league. I can give you the point that they can look better than G2 right now due to playing in Korea and having to play the Korean macro style. But if they played in the same league throughout the whole split, I don't see a world where G2
I've got another counterpoint for you, right? Here's a counterpoint. Let's see what you think of this. One of the problems I have with evaluating that in Season 9 is the way that games play out in Season 9. So if you saw this Kingzone versus SK Telecom series we referred to at the beginning of the episode, if you watch this series, you will see why actually I personally think macro in League of Legends at the moment is very limited. Because even in this series, no matter who is ahead, the job of the team who is ahead is to start dragons and barons, and then the job of the team behind is just to either smite or take the fight. That's it. I don't know what choices people think there are here. There aren't any choices. Like, you aren't going and pushing down all the towers while they take the Baron. That's very rarely ever happening. So as a result, even when the best teams play, they must meet these conditions to win the game. So as a result, think back in your mind. What games have you seen? It doesn't matter what teams in LCK, LCS, LEC. Think of these three regions. Think of games where the best team smashed the worst team and it was a 20-minute stomp. Barely ever happened. Ever. Even the best team has to take the Baron or stack the right Drakes and then end the game. You can't, this isn't Season 4. You can't rotate around the map and take towers and they have to respond to you. You can't, like, create an amazing skirmish that, like, you draw them away from where you wanted them to be and you fight them on the terrain that helps. Like, you can't do this shit. Like, the game is decided by these fucking cookie cutter options that everyone knows. Am I doing a 50-50 Baron or am I waiting to turn on the mini team fight here? Like, these are, so as a result, even the worst teams get drawn into longer games than they should be in.
In chat right now is spamming that G2 and other teams in Europe apparently did it. That's a testament to how weak the region is.
They're playing best of ones, come on.
And they're also, they're playing best of ones. But if you're telling me that SK Telecom and Kingzone and Griffin can't pile drive
no one in Korea
some of the
does
worst
that.
team.
No one in Korea can do that.
Yeah, you can't.
The game doesn't work that way.
Like, it's so annoying. Like, God.
All right, well, LS, make your final points and then let's go to a different topic. But let's let LS have last word and then move on to other, because we've been on this one forever.
No, right. So if I mean, what Thorin said earlier was just beautiful. If I asked any of these people to tell me why G2 wouldn't lose to KT or Jin Air, they'd realize very quickly that they'd just be saying the same thing I am. But then the difference is that this has been my life. I coach a Korean pro team, and I've been doing it for years on end. What have they done? Right? So even though that's not really saying anything, and it's not saying, oh, just believe me, it's saying that the amount of time and effort that it would take to explain it to the person and the amount of implied knowledge is so heavy. And some people are referencing that, Papa Smithy disagrees with me. Well, why does that make him right? Or
Right,
why
wait a
is
minute. I've got to stop this for a
expert-
second. This is
Go ahead.
one thing I'm getting really sick and tired of in League of Legends, which is moving the goalposts. So let's all agree upon what the standard is. When Thorin's wrong, that's because Thorin was never a top pro and hasn't played high elo, right? That's what everyone says, right? Well, I can actually show you that Locodoco was a top professional player. He then was a LCS winning coach. You don't accidentally win the LCS. There's been no bad coach in the history of LCS who ever won the LCS. That never happened.
Thank you, Doran.
At worst, you could say they were just an okay coach. You could never say they were a bad coach, because bad coaches make their
I did it
teams
twice.
worse. Then you go and you look at LS. LS has been higher elo than anyone in the chat right now will ever be in their entire life in Korean solo queue. So by the logic of high elo, he beats all of your opinions, but you can disagree with him and he knows nothing about League of Legends. Meanwhile, Papa Smithy, who has never been a high elo player, a pro player, or a coach, knows everything because you really like him. He's got a huggable face and he replaced Monty in Korea. Is that it? Is that why he gets to be the god of League of Legends? And because he never dares actually say a player's bad or give a real fucking opinion, he just gives all the nice opinions, and so he's a huggable guy and you want to have a beer with him. But what does that have to do with him being right on this topic? It doesn't mean anything. And I'm not saying he can't be right. I'm saying if you make those metrics, you must discount Papa Smithy's opinion on everything because he wasn't high elo, a coach, or a pro player. Now, if you want to talk about experts, I'd pick him as a very knowledgeable person. He's watched a lot of League of Legends. He has all his own coherent model for the game. But you know what? In the same way as I would find areas in his model I don't agree with, I would find areas in LS's model I don't agree with, or in Locos, or in Veterans. Have you noticed how none of the people who try to be comprehensive experts, everyone agrees with all their opinions? It's because it's their model. That's how they've built up their game understanding. There's always going to be flaws. So if you act like there's anyone perfect, half the reason why Jack got to look perfect his whole career, because the motherfucker never stepped in the arena. He just stayed on his Riot broadcast, reading off his fucking script, talked about all the things that he'd prepared before and asked someone to ask him, so he looked smart as fuck. And you know what? He was a very intelligent person, but he never came on these shows. He never had these battles on Twitter. He never put his fucking foot in the arena. So you know what? Criticize LS all you want. He was in the arena. He got some kills. He died a few times. I got a few kills. I died a lot of times, but we're in the fucking arena. Y'all are just watching behind the safety of the screen going, vote Billy off the island. He's a toxic presence. That's you, homie. You're watching Survivor right now.
I love Survivor. I hope Lauren wins this season. Anyways, let's end on what is it? Let's end on that one and let's go to a different topic.
Are there any other topics?
Wait, there's a
just
great one.
destroyed our entire fan base. All this shut. Here's the thing. You notice though, I never tell them at the end to shut the fuck up. The one thing I don't want, LS, is for them to shut up. I have made a career. I figured this game out a long time ago, homie, that a lot of you didn't, which is this. Think about the mechanism at work here, LS. No matter what you say, they talk shit about you, right? Well, first of all, that frees you to say anything you want because they're going to shut on you no matter what. Even if you say the thing they agree with, someone will be like, it's just agreeing because now he wants to win. You can't win. So what you do is this. You use that in your favor. You use the stupid-ass hype that they make to create the engagement for you, to create the platform at which everyone wants to listen to your next phrase. Because the best thing is this, LS. If they really didn't care, the thread would be downvoted. No one would give a shit. The fact that people care and think you're wrong is really good. That is a really good. Now, it's not as great as if people were really good, intelligent and reasonable. Yeah, that'd be a perfect world, but we don't live in that world. So in the world we live in, this is the best case scenario for every idiot to have an opinion, but in doing so, to drive the fucking engagement up on that thread, let the controversial tab be where all the good shit is contained in that Reddit thread, and let's all make the fucking skrill off the top. And then at the end of the show, like the WWE, we all shake hands behind the scene and go, haha, great show, wasn't it? Let's count these fucking millions up.
All right. So there's tweets that LS made in the last week that have been very, as you guys have said, controversial. So let's go over that. LS, do you want to start with the TL one or do you want to start with the Morello one?
Let's start with Morello.
Okay. Let's
Fuck it. Let's just jump right to North. Let's go to TL.
Okay.
Let me find out what the tweets were. Because here's the thing. The TL one, by the way, was what I've been saying the whole time, my dudes. But okay, let's see.
All right.
Let's see.
Doran, can you read the tweet for us so people don't have to go to Twitter? Like, you can preface it for us and then we'll get into the discussion.
I'm just looking it up now. What date was this on, by the way?
What?
Do we know what day he said this?
Let me see. Let me go back and check.
Must be a few days back now.
It was when TL played FlyQuest, so it's a lot back.
I'll scroll down a bit and I'll do a search. Let me have a look here. Do you know what date they played? I'll have a look. It must be on Saturday, right? So the 6th. Let's have a look here. Editor, just cut this part out of the video.
Third day. It's 3 days ago. I think TL actually looked pretty clean and more refined than any of the gameplay I've seen from EU games/series I watched so far.
Yes,
and much more so than the TSM/C9 series last night. I think they definitely look like the top team in NA and EU at the moment.
Yes. Okay. So this is so basically the key points to hit on here are he thinks Team Liquid looks pretty clean. He thinks that the EU games don't look clean in comparison, and he thinks that they are the top team in the West. They're the 3 points here. Okay. So LS, lay this out for us. Why did you make this case? Basically, that Team Liquid's the best team in the West, right?
Well, I later chimed in that I had to watch more Fnatic. But I think that
I watched those playoffs. They weren't good, so I doubt that changed your mind, right?
Well, yeah. So, Team Liquid, I mean, it goes back to the thing. What engages are they taking? What rotations are they taking? What is the level of decisiveness given the current map state? And then how long does it take for them to coordinate X, Y, and Z? And I just felt like, yes, they were playing against a weaker team objectively, but the initial action, the intent seemed to be more there and aligned within themselves than what I saw present, at least in European games. And obviously, I've been very vocal about this in the past, that any player can look good. Like, a diamond player can look like a pro playing against a bronze, right? So some people are trying to say, well, TL was playing against FlyQuest. Of course they're going to look good. And that, G2 is playing against Origin, so they might not have looked as clean. Or Fnatic was playing against so-and-so, so they don't look as clean. I was looking solely at what can this champion do in this given moment? What can these champions in unison do in this given moment? And then what is actually being done and decided upon with the intent behind it? Whether or not the execution is there, where is the intent? I saw G2 get into losing spots willingly.
Especially game one.
Well, not willingly, but they allowed themselves to get into losing spots many, many times and then got out of it. And this is actually one of the things I fault Griffin for. Griffin often can sometimes find themselves in very bad situations. They team fight their way out of it. It's one of the narratives, I guess, that one might say about the team. Team Liquid, yes, they're against a weaker team. At least that didn't happen with as much tendency. And I felt like I was asking the champions or whatever to do less than maybe in those series, than some of the European series, in terms of like what opportunity existed. Does it mean conclusively that TL is 100% better than G2? No. All I'm saying is that in my opinion, from watching the series and other random games throughout the splits, TL looks cleaner and more refined. It doesn't mean they win 100%, but yeah.
I can agree on TL looking cleaner, but I have to disagree on TL being the best Western team. So I actually agree with you very much on TL being a cleaner team. TL is a very systematic team. When you watch TL games, you can pick out certain things that they do. They did this last year too. Whenever they get Baron, they would always split push 4 mid, 1 bottom. They would never do 4 mid, 1 top. I mean, depending on if inhibitors were down, they would do top side, but they always had a preference to do bot side because on their exit, they would always take Dragon on their exit. There are some things that TL does that is very, very systematic about it and very clean about it. So TL is a team that's about building system and refining on those systems and doing it again and again and again. As for G2, they do have systems, but their systems feel much more looser than TL's, and their ways of winning games are much more creative and much more putting teams in difficult situations that they haven't been in before. Like the way G2 plays 1-3-1 and the kind of questions that they are able to ask teams during the game is much more multi-dimensional. So if you ask me the question, which team looks cleaner, which team is more systematic, I would say Team Liquid. But if you ask me the question, which team do you think will win when they play in a best of 5, I would probably be more inclined to say G2. So can agree with you on the cleaner point, but best team in the West, I disagree, and I lean way more heavily towards G2.
All right, here's my angle on this. The problem is, I sort of agree with some of the points both of you have made. Like, I actually do think if they played, G2 would probably win. But part of the reason why is because if you look at the way the game is played at the moment, you can be super proactive in the early game in League of Legends right now, especially if you have really strong laners, and G2 has both of those aspects. So the key thing is there's two ways the game goes if G2 and Team Liquid plays, in my opinion. Either G2 brutalizes them early and Team Liquid just has no chance to come back in the game, or Team Liquid waits, it's like a 38-minute game and they just win late. And the problem with that is, like, I actually do think Team Liquid has a great style against almost anyone, but I think G2 is one of the only teams that has the strengths to beat them in that respect. Like, I think one of the most overplayed aspects of Team Liquid this year is this idea that, like, they're a bad team because they just withstand all pressure and then beat you late. Like, that is actually the hallmark of a very good team, by the way. Like, the fact that they can always beat you in that scenario, like, you know what they're going to do. You know how they're drafting. You know exactly how they want to play. You know when they don't want to take risks. Why are you not using that against them? Because people couldn't. You think people couldn't just force Team like, how come every other team, I just described it earlier, every other team in League of Legends gets forced into stupid-ass 50-50 dragons all the time, gets forced to go to the dragon when the other team the Baron when other teams started up, etc. How does Team Liquid manage to win all these games without having a coin flip all day long? Because they have fucking Core JJ. This guy is Korean. Like, he knows how League of Legends is played, and he knows in these scenarios, this doesn't mean shit to us, just keep playing. Like, oh, in this scenario, we don't need to take this gamble. Don't bother, just play more safely. And as a result, they won more games than anyone else. It doesn't matter how good TSM looked. Still couldn't win more games. Doesn't matter how many styles Cloud9 had. Cloud9 aren't even in the fucking finals. People actually didn't give Team Liquid credit because they decided in their brain two things. One, they just bought all the best players. Doesn't even make sense. Two, they just can't play early games. Like, if you looked at LCS, almost no one could play fucking early game. Like, TSM was probably the best early game team, and they were fucking it up half the times themselves. It's just that they were better than the other teams. So I actually think that angle is mad overplayed. The idea that Team Liquid was bad. I agree. When Team Liquid tried to force early game, it looked pretty fucking shaky. I will agree with that. But that's hard to win the way that they win. That's the hardest way. Listen, as someone who's followed fucking Azubu Blaze my entire life, they were a team that had the highest point of execution to win every game because they were waiting for a Rise to come online at 35 minutes. That if it doesn't come online, you lose the game. But they would win still like 65% of the games because they knew how to execute that high degree of difficulty execution. It's way easier to play a pick comp and find a fight in the jungle or kill the jungler when he's out of position, or you just find like the wrong rotation. That is easier. Yes, it's more of a gamble. You can't do it as cleanly, but it's easier to pull off. Like, you can half fuck up an aggressive move and it might still work. Trying to run these late game styles is really hard. Then you look at the other teams. If you forget G2 for a moment, I'll take Team Liquid over any of the other teams. Origin, Fnatic, give me them all. Because Origin's a good team. They don't actually have superstar players. Like, they just have good players at every position. Team Liquid's as good as fucking Origin any day of the week. I'll take that right there. And fuck Fnatic. If you saw Fnatic against Splice and you're still hyped for Fnatic, I don't know what you're watching in the game. That was an example of like Splice constantly just like, take the game. And Fnatic being like, I don't know if I'm ready for that right now. I think I might just enter into a stupid fight here. Like, if Fnatic had half the game sense that Team Liquid had, they would have 3-0'd that series easy as fuck. Like, that looked bad, that series. So there's the end of my rant. I would probably still favour G2 to win direct matchup, but I think Team Liquid is a very good team. I mean, they're mad underrated.
Ellis, let's go to the Morello point. So the Morello one is multi-tweet. So do you want to kind of preface what it is?
The Morellonomicon thing is pro players have this tendency to build into Oblivion or regardless of what magic resist is present on the enemy team at the moment that they're building it. And then they will complete Sork Pen Boots, which is fine. And then they will complete into Morellonomicon sometimes for 1,400 gold, regardless of what the game state actually is. And for game states that are, let's say hypothetically at 24 minutes, you know that the enemy team is looking to Baron in the next 3 minutes. Okay, well, if your gold income is not that high, then getting a needlessly large rod and then having to sit on it for X more minutes until death cap is not that feasible. Okay, complete into Morello. Because it's going to give you the most oomph for your buck at that exact moment that you need it at.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem like this logic is present for a lot of pro players around the world. They will often build Morello even when it doesn't make sense. Because the item is not, I believe it's not gold efficient, right?
It got nerfed
so,
in gold efficiency. It used to be one of the more efficient items. I'm not sure how much the nerf brought it down.
You're investing 1,400 gold in locking up the ability to move towards another item for 50 ability power and 100 HP. And then obviously the Grievous Wounds. Mm-hmm. But then the Grievous Wounds is sort of, it's a gray area, because how much usage do you actually get out of it? And this was one of my arguments about Morellonomicon versus Void Staff. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you prevented 250 healing, if the other item would have allowed you to deal 300 more damage. Mm-hmm. So, itemization in pro play has always has definitely been very perplexing to me. Like I think it was, I can't remember who it was. Someone built Static Shiv on Kaisa, and Dardoch tweeted about it. I asked my ADC about it. My ADC asked some Korean ADCs, like LCK ADCs, about it. We couldn't understand why build the Static Shiv in that moment. Itemization's always been kind of weird. The Morellonomicon then got responded to by someone, and then Chakrez liked a tweet. I replied to it about something, and then it was Chakrez, Broken Shard, and I arguing on Twitter. Mm-hmm. That was the Morello thing.
Dorian, do you want to start, or should I start?
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't really have a comment on this, so I don't really give a fuck about builds for that.
So for me, like the whole builds thing, and like people arguing with builds, and I think Twitter analysts will be more right on builds a lot more of the time than pro players. Because pro players, they just play the game, and a lot of times when you ask them to build math, like they don't know. When I ask players like, hey, why do you finish Morello here? They will literally not be able to tell me why they finished Morello here, and they built it because that's what they were taught to do. And like the old math behind it was Oblivion Orb plus Lurk Pen was one of the fastest way to get very high magic pen, true damage from ability. So you built it and it was really efficient. And then you upgrade to Morello's whenever you needed space, or what if there wasn't a great item that you could go afterwards. So like that was the reasoning behind it. And then Morello also got nerfed where they made it more expensive. They made Oblivion or a little bit more expensive, and then so going into that pathing or that build pad also got nerfed. So there's just a lot of little intricacies that go onto it, and I think Twitter analysts will be more right because that's something that they care about more so, and something
that's their lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something.
Like I'll tell you. Here's the thing, you've got to give credit to Shakara's in that angle. That is something he has done his whole career, basically, because obviously he used to literally like one trick kill and other champions, you know, so he was all about finding the perfect build for whatever kind of solo QE game he's played. So I'm sure that is his lane. Like that's, if anything, he's picked the smart area to fight in. I will say, by the way, this is another area where I don't care what anyone on Reddit or anyone in chat says about this topic, because again, LS, this is why if you could ever turn the fucking magnifying glass onto the person asking you the question, they would crumble. We're supposed to believe that these fans who have a job and do school and play the game on the side, watch every major region, know the matchups for all 110 champions against each other, know the solo queue metagame in every region, know the professional metagame in every region, know the effective, efficient gold build path for every single champion. No, you don't! The logistics of that are fucking impossible. Nobody knows all that shit. Everyone is specializing, or they're picking like 3 areas and they're ignoring one other one. So as usual, I'm sure every fan knows, because since they know nothing, they can't differentiate what they know that's of value. They just know everything. So it's only really like a super niche discussion that you guys can have. And even then you can sort of disagree with each other, but who really fucking knows, right?
I just think it's so funny because like people talk about like efficiency of items, like what was the most efficient there, like they do the math on it and then they prove it by, if you look at this math, you see how more efficient it was. Or they talk about like, oh, because Braum blocks this. Like pro players aren't sitting there before they buy items. They're not sitting there with like a calculator. Okay, if I get death cap, but because we have 2 Infernos, but they have a Braum, so Morellonomicon isn't good there. They're just going a lot of times by what they know and like what they've been taught. Yeah, so I think yes, pro players build wrong items. That doesn't make analysts smarter than pro players. That doesn't make Reddit or Twitter analysts smarter than pro player. It's just you're judging them on something they did in like 1 second or 2 seconds of thinking. Like they go click, click.
Oh, by the way, here's the best way to describe it, Loco. If you're watching the game and you go, that's weird, why did he do that? Let me just figure that out. Stop right there. That's immediately where you have the advantage he doesn't have. Like, unless you can instantly go, that's bad, he can't be expected to know that. He can't go, time out, coach. Yeah, I'm just going to go away and get this calculator out. Right, if I bought this item and it goes into that, but the game, he doesn't have time for that, does he? He's playing the game right now. It's live. The game's live.
There's some outrageous ones though, like when BDD built Phantom Dancer into Steric into Maw.
Oh,
like,
God.
all those passives don't work well with each other, and those are just rules that you need to know, and he should definitely not know it, and I think it was fine for analysts and coaches to shit on BDD for that. But in general, pro players building wrong items, unless it's fucking outrageously dumb, if it's the second best option or even the third best option, I think it's more than fine.
Well, I'm of the stance that I want to see things elevated. I want to see them put up a lot higher. So, the smallest of mistakes I want refined.
Yeah, I will also say this as well, because this ties into all these discussions we've just had for the last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why you're not going to hear these opinions on the LEC and LCS broadcast is because they involve being able to admit that a whole region is fairly bad or is not good at a global level. They are never going to say that on the broadcast. Like, the one thing they're never going to do is downplay their own fucking league, which is the one product they are presenting you. So as a result, it's not that these people have no integrity and that they're all morally bankrupt and they've sold out to Riot. It's that if you are Froscoring in Europe, you can't say that the European meta is totally messy and they don't understand macro concepts. What you do is you come into the relative world of the LEC and you go, well, within the LEC, this team, Maurigin, has really good macro, and this team down here, SK, is a bit ropey with them. You just go within the relative world of your region, which is totally legitimate because you're only covering that region. But the point is, to set up any of these interesting discussions, you have to be willing to say that a pro player did something completely wrong and basically fucked up. So you're only going to hear these conversations on Twitter or these shows. You're never going to see it on the Riot broadcast. If you're looking to that for your final authority, you're going to be a pleb forever, mate, because they can't say certain things, unfortunately. They can't go out those bounds. I messaged some of those people, some of the people we've referenced in this conversation. Privately, they'll tell you stuff they can't say publicly. They just don't think it's worth their time. And unlike LS and me and Loco, who literally have built our reps so that we can take people thinking we're an idiot, most of those people can't. Papa Smithy can't have a time where everyone turns on him on Reddit. His whole thing's built around being loved and being the guy that everyone enjoys listening to because he's very safe. He's just going to prevent you a nice, safe game of League of Legends, and here's the right conditions, and here's where someone didn't quite play it out as well as he could have done,
Well, this is the thing, Thorn, is that now the position that we're in, where we are, I think people fail to realize how much easier it would be for you.
Of course, you could just go with the street. Yeah, of course. Why not just win a few fans? Just tell them any bullshit. Oh, G2's way better. Yeah, of course.
Why the fuck don't I?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever fucking thought about why don't I just be fucking politically correct and PR with everything? Do you know how much easier it would be? I'd probably I'd be over 100K Twitter followers by now. I'd fucking make more money. I'd have more subs on Twitch. What the fuck? Of course it would be so much easier.
Wait, I disagree with that. I think you'd be way less popular if you're politically correct.
No, I think on my rise, I would have been less popular. I think on my rise. I think where I'm at now, if I flipped a switch and just became super happy-go-lucky, starting Last Worlds and continuing
Loco, I'll corroborate what Ellis is saying here. I know what you mean. Obviously, some of his rise was due to controversy like this, and people blowing his name up, etc. But the reason why I agree with LS is this. Exactly the phenomenon Papa Smithy has is what LS would have right now. Do you know what that famous thing? There's a great cartoon and it shows, right? So, okay, you know what a lemonade stand looks like, where it's just a little table with a fucking sign saying buy lemonade here and you queue up to it, right? So imagine two lemonade stands. This is the image. One of them says comforting lies.
And the other one is harsh truth.
The other one says unpopular truth. The joke is obviously everyone would just be queued up to the comforting lies, right? Because everyone wants to hear what they want to know. Everyone wants to hear them tell them you're right, the things you think are correct, all the things you don't know, don't worry about them, they're scary, but ignore them. Right? Here's the thing. The most popular guy is going to be the guy who's embedded in Korea. He's watching the best region play all the time, but then when he watches the West, he tells them, hey, you guys played pretty well. Hey, Wonder, you're a pretty fucking good top laner, my dude. wow, Caps, oh, crazy some of the stuff you're pulling off. Everyone wants to hear that because the logic is he gets the validation of being the Korean expert, but then he uses the credit he's built up as the Korean expert to make the Westerner feel good about their favourite players and teams. The least popular guy is going to be the guy who goes, I watch all the Koreans play. So you know what? Actually, Perks in the bot lane wasn't that impressive to me. I thought he was kind of a bit average. Like, no one wants to fucking hear that. Nobody. Who wants to hear that? I do, but that's because I want to see the world fucking burn.
I know. I think Perks is actually really good. In fact, I think he ended up, Loco, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He ended up where I placed him on that, the meme tier list that he disagreed with because I didn't have Wonder placed higher. I think he ended up actually right around where I placed him, and the reasons that I placed him as high as I did was because of his mechanical prowess as a player, and because of the way that he was able to pilot champions in the mid lane. Weird how that fucking works.
I think the problem with that tier list was I think there was some bias towards some of the players that you worked with, most notably Selfie. And if the tier list said this is where players would end up at the end of the season, then why
was Kasing so low? Why was Kasing in the gutter? Why did I flame Kasing?
You being unbiased for Kasing.
The logic isn't.
No, you being unbiased for Kasing, or you putting Kasing lower doesn't make putting Selfie third any more unbiased. That just means you have a different bias for Kasing, or that means you were logical about Kasing. I think putting Selfie at third for Europe was definitely a bias.
Come on, man.
But I worked with Kasing.
Ellis, that was whack putting Selfie third. Come on.
No, I put Selfie third with an asterisk, which was contingent on X factors. I put him behind Nuke Duck, but people didn't talk about the asterisks.
What was the asterisk?
The asterisk was provided he had a proper team environment, which Selfie has been, in the gutter. There's been multiple articles.
He's the worst agent of all time.
Yes, he is the worst agent of all time.
Himself.
Provided he had the right tools and setup necessary to flourish, I thought he could be right up there with Nuke Duck. I didn't put him up there with Caps.
Basically, Loco, he did that thing where he saw the potential. And he was like, if the potential comes out. The problem with that is...
then everyone deserves an asterisk, and if they have this and this, then they can be higher.
No, that's not fair, Loco, because there's certain players... okay, so you're telling me fucking Exile could have been really good. There's no... Exile could be on Griffin tomorrow and he wouldn't.
I'm saying there shouldn't be asterisks. I'm saying every player should be judged with the same kind of... same kind of rule set. There shouldn't be an asterisk. Every rule set is same for the players. That's what I'm saying. And as for the tier list stuff, for Perks being later on and why it was so controversial, if LS's tier list was about how they would finish at the end of the split, then it can be more, I would say normalized, accepted. But to put Perks up at the start of the year that highly, I think was what made things so controversial. That immediately Perks would be that great of an AD carry player because he developed into that throughout the
but here's the thing, two things. One, as you just said yourself, as far as I know, LS never said it was what people's level was at the beginning. It was the tier list for the end of the split, right?
Yes, it was.
So that was already...
I have no idea on that, and I don't think majority of people watching it had an idea on that.
Wait a minute, Loco. What? You comment on things you don't even know the context of.
I comment on things on the context that I have. Everyone comments on things with the context they have, not the entirety of the context.
No. If you're going to comment on something, you go and find out the context.
If you're going to comment on something, you're going to go with the context that you have.
Black Beauty. What's this book about? Well, here's my opinion. I don't need to read it. The context, it's got a horse on the front. Probably about horse fucking in it. That seems inappropriate. Ban it.
You go with the context that you have, unless you feel like you're missing majority of the context.
No, if you're going to flame the person, you have to at least look into what they fucking said. The first question I have is this, right? So if you said to me, LS just said that fucking, Jensen's better than Faker, I wouldn't go, wow, an idiot, fucking Jensen. I'd go, well, yeah, but in what context?
Yeah, but I didn't flame, so what is it? I'm going by the context.
No, I'm not flaming you. I'm just saying in this context, that is the most important thing to know is that he meant by the end of the split. So take that out of the equation immediately. Secondly, to be fair, if you know anything about LS, that's the way he's always judged players. One of the areas where he gets props is that he has picked some players from solo queue that became very good. Well, by that logic, Loco,
Look
the
at
logic you
Summit.
just described.
Do I get to
By the
play
way,
Summit yet?
the problem I have is both people go too far. Like LS, is, as you can see, if he's picking Selfie to come third best mid, he's obviously gone too far on the potential. Like, yeah, that could happen, but it's not going to. Other people go the other way, Loco. I've flamed you for it in the past, mate. You use this static logic of wherever someone's at now, you can't possibly upgrade them with a player who's worse now. No, because the game doesn't work that way. Like, remember what I said last year? That I thought Soaz was a better player than Whippo. Like, I was a moron to everyone in the world, Loco, because Whippo's 10 times better. What are you talking about? Look at him, he's way better. Look at them this year. Who has better macro knowledge out of the two? Who can play better with worse teammates? Who actually knows what they're fucking doing all the time in lane? Soaz, way better player than Whippo, mate. His team was way worse. He had no chance to do as well as Whippo did. Whippo had all sorts of problems. But the point is, you didn't see those last year. So if you'd have ever said, well, that's not an upgrade, it is. It's, again, you have to use a mixture of both, a mixture of what the current form and potential. You blend the two together and you come up with a solution. There's no right or wrong answer here, by the way. That's actually why I think having these discussions is less interesting if it's like we all have to agree at the end, as opposed to like, let's like actually explain our position. Give more reasons. Ask them, well, why is that? Put a point to them. I disagree on this. What do you say to that? So I thought actually the discussion was good, but people are just going to want a conclusion at the end anyway, aren't they? That's just the way people are. That's the end, isn't it?
Yeah. And any topics that we missed that you guys want to bring up?
No,
Don't know.
not that. It's
If
just,
there's anything worth talking about, I'll just let Papa Smithy talk about it on stream, and you guys can all enjoy it.
Don't flame Papa. You know what I find so weird though is the people in chat that are like, oh, Papa and other experts disagree with you on A, B, and C, and I'm like, okay, well, why are they right and I'm wrong?
LS,
Like,
all that needs to be said is this: when Froggen said that Karthus beats LeBlanc, everyone in the world disagreed with him. You remember this? It was back in like season 4, right? Do you know the only person in the world who agreed with Froggen? Do you remember this
Faker,
story?
right? Faker.
The greatest player of all time at the mid lane position. And do you know what? Even Faker agreeing didn't change anyone's mind. Everyone read it, still said they were wrong. They said Froggen and Faker are wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. They're being arrogant or geeked. So if you're not going to accept the opinion of Faker on how a mid lane matchup works in his prime, then you can never cite someone else as an authority figure. Like, you can never say, well, Jack disagrees with LS, or, you know what, actually, DeFicio said that LS is wrong about that. It doesn't matter. You have just ruined your own standard. Either we're going with people who played the game and are better and they know more, or we're not. It's one or the other. You can't choose. Well, for this opinion, I actually like Wild Turtle, so I'm going to agree that he knows more. But on this other opinion, I actually think that DeFicio doesn't know anything, so he knows nothing. You can't go like that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. So that's the end. Watch LS's stream. Hopefully he flames Loco on there and then like bits out a solid 12-month span before he comes on the show next. So Loco's like mad frustrated and shit. Like, I hope he does all that good shit. Draws on the map a lot. Starts playing and then like, I tell you one thing I did enjoy. I didn't know this about LS actually. Is that, you know, when he talks normally, in normal English, he has this really whiny, like, nasal voice, like, hey, you guys, oh, fucking, hey, play Eddie, motherfucker. It's like, he has this, like, mad accent like that, right? But then when he speaks Korean, he becomes, like, so fucking soothing. It's like, he's got such a fucking softness, softness to his voice. He just becomes, like, so fucking sweet. I can totally understand the way this whole fucking game's being played out there in Korea. I know how he's climbed the ladder over there. Exactly.
One thing I'll give credit to LS for is he's been much better about not chatting. What
do you mean?
What is it? On stream, you've been much better about not chatting when you play.
Oh, what do you mean chatting? Like in game?
Yeah, in game.
No, I never chat for like 4 years.
Really? I remember watching before. What is it? You would chat furiously, no?
No. I've never chatted.
Okay. It might have been.
I've always considered it a mini game that I just wouldn't chat. But now I just don't chat. Like now that I don't chat. Now my Korean LOL account for like 6 months didn't have chat, and it wasn't a client bug. It was the account didn't have chat. It was a really weird.
By the way, LS, here's the thing. I've always said this. You know when people try and like chastise Tyler, Warren, and Hashinshin, like, you guys should stop being toxic and complaining. It's like, that's the only reason everyone watches. What are you fucking talking about? That's like telling Kim Kardashian, like, could you put your ass away and just act like, you know, like a homemaker? Not going to do that, is she, you dumb fuck? That's not what she built a brand of. I'm going to put on my Twitter now, for the millionth time, my favorite streaming Twitch clip of all time. Everyone go on my Twitter right now. It's a clip of LS, and I want to see this type of flame every fucking time. This is one of my favorite clips of all time. It's so good because the pure anger in his eyes. He is ready to just burn the whole. If you would have had a button next to him that launched the nukes, he'd have fucking killed us all after this game. He'd have just turned and hit those buttons like whack-a-mole, motherfucker. We'd all be in an atomic post-apocalyptic winter right now. I'd be farming fucking herds and kicking pelts and selling them. No, Loco will be dead. Look at him. He's full like a fucking rake with a fucking race wrapped around it.
Look, never doubt my desire to win the fucking
I know.
game.
Watch this game, everyone. It's so amazing.
Watch my mouse that
Dude,
I hold
my
up,
favorite
and then it goes
part.
right down to the mouse again
Dude,
as soon as the stun ends.
my favorite part of the clip is that like the Tom Kench tongue comes like this close to hitting them, and that's when he just can't handle it. Okay. Like if you slow it down in slow-mo, you know that famous clip from The Simpsons, like this is the moment you can see where his heart finally breaks. It's like that moment. You can see the moment where LS just literally the bomb just goes off in his brain. He's like, fuck everyone. It's so good. Watch this clip, everyone.
Fucking bitch! Why did you get out? Fuck! I'm so fucking disgusted.